I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous. By the power of Grayskull!
I have the
Hey everybody, welcome to another absolutely glorious, nerdy episode of Nerd. I am so excited to do this. Of course, I am here with my amazing co-host, Andres Alvarez. Dre, how you doing?
Good. I am the Battle Cat Tier He-Man. And who are we going to go with? Are we going to say David Igo is Merman, or who are we giving that out
He's
to?
Skeletor. Obviously. No,
Skeletor. Oh,
no,
of course.
just
Yeah.
kidding. We're very, very.
I'm
how about
She-Ra.
How about this? Yeah. He could be She-Ra, I'll be Tila, and you can be Evelyn. How's that sound?
No, I was thinking
Evelyn's the
if
best.
you're He-Man, he's Battlecat. I'm your twin sister, so I'll be, because I have the longer hair.
Dave, we look so much alike. Now, David Igo, you have been a guest of Jeff Has Cool Friends. You are one of my better friends in my life. One of the people that I really, really enjoy. I love being around. I love celebrating. You also happen to be, and you're going to refute me on this. You're going to fight me on a compliment because sometimes Dave Igo fights people on compliments. You are one of the
What's that like? I'm going to cut in because that's my thing. I cut in. What's that like, Jeff, to have people that fight you on compliments? That's got to be a real pain, right?
Some of us don't
I'll let
deserve
you
compliment.
proceed.
Dave, you are what I consider to be one of the modern visual architects of, or excuse me, one of the visual architects of the modern MOTU canon. As in,
Accept that compliment. No, I mean, thank you, and I'll just throw you a curveball and just accept it without fighting you on it. So, yes, I am.
no, but you are, because first and foremost,
Okay.
if you want to know how connected we are, Dave and I have spent PowerCon together while working for Tweeterhead. We did do 2 PowerCons. That's right. Wait, maybe we only did 1. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Monster Palooza. That's why.
Yeah. Did a Monster Palooza as well. Being sort of the bringer of the Tweeterhead brand, continuing spiritually, of course, not technically, the work that you were doing over at Sideshow with Masters of the Universe, bringing that here. I was talking about this to a friend of mine that we were having you on, a good friend of the show, Logan Trent, who said, "Is that the guy who's responsible for that bitchin' Skeletor bust?" And I was like, that is exactly correct. So, Dave, you are unnamed in Masters of the Universe.
Sweet.
It's fun.
Thanks. No, it's been really flattering, and I won't say humbling because that's not what that is. It's inflating for sure to be, anywhere near. The history of He-Man is long and deep, and obviously, I've been hugely inspired by so many of the artists and architects from the original inception of it, and to the more modern stuff, like when we're talking about today, 2000X, or MCY, is it Mike Young, MYP, Mike Young Productions version with the Four Horsemen and Eric Treadway being the top MOTU nerd back then to really help shape a lot of the visuals of this. And one guy who bought, I think it was after the Skeletor bust or one of the Tweeterhead pieces, one of the other maquettes kind of said in one of the MOTU groups that oh, Dave Igo with this Legends line is what Eric Treadway and the Four Horsemen were for, the 2000X. And I almost want to throw myself off a building because that would have been ending my life at a peak moment where I'm I feel super not worthy at all to be compared to that. But at the same time, it's super freaking flattering. I just, Eric's become a bigger brother to me. He's always been super awesome, supportive of what I've been doing at Tweeterhead. And same with the other horsemen, CB and Jim are both awesome guys. They all, anytime I see them, they, huge hugs when they're cool with it. And, if COVID's around, it's fist bumping from a distance. But yeah, it's been a ride, man, especially not to keep jumping ahead, but just being able to work this at Sideshow and then continue it now at Tweeterhead. How many people can say they started a line at one place and were able to continue it at another place? It's, I don't know.
Who can? The Four Horsemen. Because they did that with this specific line.
So by the way, let me hop in,
Wait.
Jeff. I'll do the top level. So this is the end of, are we season 7, Jeff? Is it season 6
The
or
end
7?
of season 7, I think. Or season
Holy cow. So we do trilogies here at Nerd. So the Nerd podcast, we basically do 3 episodes around a topic that Jeff and I bandy back and forth. And so this one is, I can give my long convoluted one, but the pithy one Jeff will say is just toy reboots. And I would say like awesome toy reboots of original brands. So we did G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. We did Star Wars, Power of the Force 2, not Power of the Force Strike Back. I made that joke on that show. Make it again here. And then, of course, we're going to do He-Man, the 2002, also known as the 2000X line, which is huge here. Before we get going on the He-Man line, the same thing, like, seems like it's going full force, was just displayed at Monsterpalooza, right, which Jeff was at. I'm saying it right, the Monstors?
Oh, yes, that's my own thing, the Monstors with Kaiju Doom, under my own solo-owned company, Igo stuff. Yeah, that's like my love child to all things 80s toys, kind of like mashed up into stuff. Yeah.
And these are awesome creative figures. And I think like as we get going, and I'll let you take the wheel again, Jeff, to get us back to Masters of the Universe 2000X, but like you completely understanding, like it sounds really weird. Those feel very Masters of the Universe when you're looking at like a cow shark. I don't know why, just something about it feels Master of the Universe, feels like, a guy with a jaw, with a trap jaw as a mouth with a gun arm. That all seems the same.
I
Jeff.
would like to can I have a small amount of input on that? Would
Go
that
for it.
why that might be the case?
This time, Jeff, and only this time, you can have small input on this.
When you look at toy lines, right? And you had Star Wars, and Star Wars was based on a property that existed. Masters of the Universe was, and one of the history through lines that we're going to have here that people really have a hard time accepting. Masters of the Universe exists always because of market research. And people don't like that. They want to think that something is pure. This thing came about. It's a toy line that was built as a reaction to Star Wars. And it's weird. It's fantasy sci-fi. And they really threw a lot of weird stuff. They threw the kitchen sink in there. That then led to the inspiration of other toy lines throughout the 1980s. Now, Dave and I and you all grew up at that time. So when we think about our formative toy experiences, they tend to have these very strange influences. And so it would make sense that when we make things, we're going to be influenced slightly by the things we grew up with. And then we get to bloom and show the things that we love out of those inspirations, which I think that's the vibe I get from that. Because we see that a lot.
100%. I mean, I think, not to jump around too much, but to kind of like touch on what you were saying, He-Man came about because Mattel passed on Star Wars, and they're going to put all their money in Conan to find out Conan was an R-rated movie, so they could make toys of Conan. So like, Conan, Star Wars, go make something. And He-Man was born, and that's like a super gross oversimplification. But like, Star Wars was inspired by so many, like George Lucas was inspired by so many things. Yeah. I think a lot of creatives get caught up on, no, my idea can't be compared to anything else because it's like 100% original. It's like, dude, nothing's 100% original. Things come from either strategic market research, like you said, Jeff, or also just like what is in the back of our head is inspiration. And I'm totally non-apologetic or unapologetic of like Monsters is my love story of He-Man meets Ninja Turtles meets Street Sharks, a little bit of Game of Thrones, for good measure. It's like, and then the things I don't like about those things I remove from it. Like I just didn't feel like modern tennis shoes and wristwatches and laser guns worked in Monsters. I'm removing that to make it like tribal, but there's a formula to everything, whether we like to accept it or not, or admit it or not,
And something that you touched on too, which we will discuss in Masters of the Universe, right? It was, when you really look at it, it was Conan and Star Wars, mix them together, and then stuff builds from there, right? And then the 2000X line, it's like those two things plus anime, go. Now, when you look at like when people are like, yeah, but Ninja Turtles, it's like that's just X-Men and Daredevil with animals.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point. Like that's what they are.
And it was the burst of that kind of, the Ninja Turtles spawned off like Battle
Cowboys of Moo Mesa,
Sharks and stuff. Yeah.
So like looking at it, okay, so a brief history is Masters of the Universe starts in 1982. It has the exact expiration date that toy lines generally have, which is anywhere from 4 to 6 years, right? And then groups of children will age out and you have to do the new thing. Like Masters of the Universe lasted from 1982 to 1987. Good for them, right? Like that's exactly what it is, but they knew when it was done. and it died. They tried rebooting it in 1990 with the New Adventures of He-Man. Very recently on Jeff Has Cool Friends, my friend John Hastings, that was his He-Man. That's what was his He-Man was. But for most people, they didn't like it. It lay dormant. So Dave is showing that he has the Skeletor from the New Adventures of He-Man. I think kind of a equally cool design on that Skeletor, by the way.
I think that Skeletor is super cool. And actually, even the original artwork for him where he's more svelte and he's that weird running pose. I'm like, that's a bitching cool alternate take on Skeletor.
Terrifying. Yeah.
He-Man is interesting. I think what they did with him in the classics toy line was really cool. But I think actually New Adventures would be a fun one to see someone like reskin for a modern era. Take like, all right, He-Man in space. I mean, technically say Eternity's in space, but you know what I mean? Like, let's make it a little bit more sci-fi and go crazy. I think that would actually be really exciting now.
And they did do that, I believe, in the Matty Collector run, the Master of the Universe stuff. Like, I think they have like re-released those characters because they are such a nice nod and a wink. So around the late 90s, nostalgia becomes a massive push for business, right? You started to see young adults have a little bit of money, and Master of the Universe is giving a little bit of a commemorative thing around 2000, 2001. They release a commemorative run that is basically repackaging the original toys. So they just reproed the toys, put them in a special commemorative packaging, put them out there, and they flew off the shelves. That was the green light for what we are now going to be calling, and is now known as, the 2000X line. And that is sort of a brief prelude to where we are going to be now. I would like to shout out Dan Larson for doing a very concise talk about episode on the cartoon of that and sort of like where it went wrong and stuff. I cannot suggest enough to watch that. The Secret Galaxy stuff is always amazing. I also want to give a huge shout out to another Dan, and that's Pixel Dan, who Dave was with me when I bought this book. When Pixel Dan himself came to our booth to freak out on the Tweeterhead stuff and how excited he was. And I was like, and he said who he was. I'm like, you wrote that book. I need it. And so I went over, and when I had my break, I went over and bought it. And this visual history of Masters of the Universe of the toys is here. And this was my like Bible of research for this episode. I mean, this thing is massive.
Yeah. Insane. There's obviously a whole team that worked on that, and Val Staples be another like pinnacle, like keeper and knower and sharer of all that is He-Man knowledge, and arguably being the guy that kept it alive from post 2000X show ending with the comic books. He
wrote the comic. Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to jump in, but
no, you're supposed to jump in.
Oh, cool. I didn't want to. You're like, Dave, I'm going to talk about that next. Damn it, that was my next call out. But yeah, Val's been awesome. He runs PowerCon, but he arguably kept He-Man alive after 2000X was like chilling out a little bit with the He-Man.org forums, and Val's become a good friend. And through him, I met Emiliano, who was the main artist on the comic books, and he's been a huge inspiration for me too, with like, all this stuff I've been working on. His art like really kind of helped solidify the 2000X look in terms of like a comic book look, and even helping design characters that never made it onto the show or in the toy line. It was rad. But yeah, it's so cool. And it's like the He-Man line could have like died at any moment. It never did. Is always like, it kind of dipped a little bit, but then there's always like super awesome people that held the torch, kept the fandom alive, got people excited when there's even nothing new coming out. They were digging deep and finding random cool shit. And like, the Honor and what's the foundation? Jeff, do you know the name? Power and Honor Foundation?
Power and Honor Foundation?
Yeah. Like
I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. They were always doing a deep dive, talking to like, there's so many amazing people out there that just help, like, did all this research for people like dum-dums like me that get a chance to make this stuff. I'm like, where do I start? Oh, here's this book by Val, or here's this book by Dan, or here's, this video by Dan Larson. Here's this thing by Pixel Dan. Like, there's so many things. I can't thank those people enough, because without those people, like all the stuff I work on, I would feel like an idiot. I'd be like, where do I even start?
And we also have to give a big shout out to the previous generation for making it nearly impossible for my generation to have kids. So we end up having this like disposable income that will keep that nostalgia alive, because I got to be 100% honest. Like it's funny but it is a very big reason why the millennial generation invests so much more in nostalgic junk, to put it as bluntly as possible, like plastic, because we're like, well, I'm never going to own a house and I'm never going to have a kid. So like, I might as well just buy my childhood in piecemeal. And that
Yep.
is a real thing. So Mattel realized around 2000, once those commemoratives started flying off the shelf, and they were like, the market is still very much there. What they didn't realize, because they were limited editions, what they didn't realize is that the collector's market had shifted to older as opposed to younger. So the price points were still relatively simple around the time. They were around $7 for a 6-inch action figure. But they found out, they're like, all right, we got to do what we did back in 1982, which is hurry up, get a cartoon out. This cartoon is now going to be on Cartoon Network. The scheduling of that show was very, very bad, so people weren't able to pick it up. And it is now a universally beloved cartoon. It's much better written than, nothing against the original cartoon, but it's not easy to watch.
And we know there's
kinda-
different restrictions back then, and like they're kind of reacting like, hey, here's this new toy, make a thing about it, and it can't have this, or this, and needs this PSA. It's like, oh, what? It's just like,
It's all
and
you
you
have
have
to do to put a toy commercial out. To
yeah,
put a 22-minute toy, all you have to do is put a little PSA at the end. It's like, don't smoke cigarettes.
yeah.
Buy our toys.
So, by the way, I want to throw out a little bit of the research I did as I watched the original, well, part of it. I skimmed through the first episode of the first Masters of the Universe, which is like the disappearing diamond. And it's really funny. The guy who did that prolific, Robbie, I'm dropping his last name, but has done a ton, like went into like Carmen Sandiego, produced on a ton, wrote on a ton. He wrote like 8 episodes of the original He-Man, and his first 2 are both on disappearing, which I was just laughing. I'm like, he really likes disappearing. First episode's the disappearing diamond. I really love it because it just starts out. Prince Adam does the classic intro we all know. I'm Prince Adam. I'm really He-Man. Sorcerer gave her my powers. These
Keeper of the
three people
secrets
know
of
it.
Castle Grayskull.
Yeah. Jeff could probably recite it verbatim.
Marvelous powers were revealed to me the day I held my magic sword and said,
Do you have that in card form, Jeff? That'd be even more awesome. But okay, anyway. So that episode starts, and then it actually reminds me a lot of like Batman, the 1960s movie, where it basically starts up with Skeletor like calling together all of his minions. He calls together like Trapjaw, Evelyn, Merman, forgetting the fourth, Beastman helps him do it. And the episode just goes from there. And it's actually, it's kind of amusing because it is really just showing off a bunch of action figures. At the end, the message He-Man gives is, by the way, some people say you can just do things easy, but you can't just do things easy. Don't believe people if they just give you a shortcut. And I'm just like, I don't really believe that. This episode, Skeletor had you all on the ropes with his disappearing diamond. He was just an idiot. Like, it's not like there are no easy ways. It's like, if you get an easy way, don't be stupid, but not my message.
That's also very funny of He-Man to be like, nothing's easy. Anyway, the day I held aloft my magic sword and said,
Yeah, dude.
Okay, but then the 2000X, there is a 3-part pilot episode or intro episode, and it starts the same way. So it starts doing this fascinating thing where it's trying to double dip, right? It's trying to be nostalgic. So there's a callback. Adam says like, I'm Prince Adam, and he starts talking, same intro we all know, and then Skeletor attacks, and we get a really cool visual intro, and that's the start. So right, it's calling back so people who understand the original show get the callback, but then it's trying to appeal to kids, and that's where you're trying, that's the Dan Larson on Secret Galaxy thesis. He's basically saying part of the reason that show struggled was trying to placate 2 audiences, to trying to be a nostalgic throwback to people while also trying to rope in the youngins. You never know, by the way. That's the thing. These things are just flash in the pans. You cannot predict what's going to happen. One thing
you got to remember, that was also kind of early in the Cartoon Network original programming era of mixing those 2 in. Like nowadays, you could just make it like an adult, like a Rick and Morty kind of a thing or whatever, and people would be much less reticent to enjoy it,
I'll say the one subtle difference that I'll give between the 2 shows that I found was interesting, and Jeff, you might like as like a Batman fan, is in the first one, we get the He-Man Adam, dual nature, and we get that, Adam is an act, right? He is intentionally acting lazy. they really dig into them in a lot of like the supplemental materials. Like I have some of the old books. R.L. Stine wrote some of the original books. Goosebumps author wrote some He-Man books in the 80s. It's everybody worked on He-Man,
I
which
think
is ridiculous.
the big ones that you can look at as people who really became architects of larger things would be Paul Dini
Bruce Timm.
and J. Michael Straczynski.
Mhm.
Like J. Michael's creator of Babylon 5, among
Yeah.
other things. And, you know, he ended up writing on She-Ra and Real Ghostbusters and stuff like that. But
all I was going to say between the two is that the new one starts He-Man as a kid who is kind of not ready for this.
Yeah.
And then they try and do both. The old one, you get the kind of image that He-Man and Adam are both competent. And for whatever reason, it was kind of weird watching the two where I didn't like the second one, at least how we're introduced, because we have to do with the backstory, right? First He-Man, we're just going to jump you in. We don't need to give you the backstory. We'll just start you off. The new one's like, we're going to tell you about Keldor. We're going to tell you about Eternia. We're going to tell you about the old people. We're going to tell you about how He-Man got the sword. He has a new sword. They don't explain it. That was a cool thing. The Four Horsemen, if I recall, they had a plan there.
Yes. So, go ahead, Dave. You were going to say something?
Oh, just touching on that intro, it was my buddy Jay Oliva I think he's credited as head of story or something. He's a credit in the 2000X show, and he came up with, and he was mainly a main storyboard artist, and he kind of like directed a lot. He said he directed a lot of the efforts in that whole show, and he came up with the idea of the intro because he wanted to have that familiar original intro, and then boom, pull the rug out from under you, but it's new and dynamic and action oriented. So that's what it's like. Hi, I'm Prince Adam. Like the bad guys show up. He's like, it was very intentionally done that way to kind of like pull you in and then be like, but it's new. And I actually think that works well. I don't think you always have to go all in totally new or, hey, it has to be this. I felt like that was actually really well done in terms of balancing the two, like making it familiar, but then, hey, here's a new twist on this and cranking it up to 11 a little bit.
I'm with you 1000%. Now, the Four Horsemen were designers and sculptors for McFarlane Toys, who created a studio. McFarlane Toys were really the first sort of like really higher end action figure line, starting with that Spawn run. They were, their big thing was just like they weren't doing 2 toys per a mold. Like they were putting in the detail and making sure that you got your money's worth for not much more money, right? Now, because they were so highly stylized, because they came out of Spawn, saw what adult collectors were responding to, knew how to hold on to the zeitgeist in a very good way. They knew that anime style was very important. That was a part of it. They go through, and they actually created this very interesting backstory that Mattel backed away from because they were afraid of it. And that backstory was the reason that the Power Sword looks much more like cybernetic and different is primarily because the story that they're establishing is that in the original toy line, Skeletor is trying to get He-Man's power sword. He has his power sword. Put them together, they turn into a key. That's how you get into Castle Grayskull and you can access the secrets, right? So like there was that original, like we each have half of the key and we're going at it. In this one, Skeletor has gotten that sword, which if you look at the toy design of Skeletor, you'll notice his sword is a double sword.
Yeah.
Now, and so what they did was they were like, but Man-at-Arms created this like cyber sword, like this very, very tech sword, which, by the way, Mattel loved the design of, and they just decided that was going to be their sword. And then they were like, and then the sorceress imbued the power of Grayskull to be able to combat Skeletor, right? Now, the other main design flaw, other than things looked cooler because they weren't set with one specific body type, but the big one that people saw really was Prince Adam no longer just looks like He-Man with less of a tan. And that actually ended up sticking. That design point stuck when we saw Revelation and Revolution come out recently, as they went with the like puny Adam, the Bruce Banner Adam that we have on that. And that became a very, very cool way for people to sort of differentiate them, that it seemed like this was taking the line a little more seriously. And that I think adult collectors really appreciated. Dave, did you buy these when they came out?
I actually didn't, because I was in college and I was focusing on college. I was actually really proud of myself. I didn't go out and buy a bunch of toys. I was like so focused on drawing. I was going to animation school, and animation's very time consuming. Like when they came out, I was like, I even missed the cartoons on Cartoon Network. I was the guy that actually got into the toys later, and I got into the toys because I got a statue first. I got the big clawful from NECA first, like that giant statue. I'm sure you have it, Jeff, but like that was like the first thing I got was the big statue, not like the Stactions
The big
version. I
massive
got
one.
one. I got as a gift from my then girlfriend at the time. She got it for me for my birthday. I'm like, what the? And then so I went and got Trap Jaw. So I had Trap Jaw and Clawful. Then I went back and started getting the toys, and then that's when I finally got to sit down and watch the cartoon. So I was actually not a non-supporter of it because it wasn't like, oh, I didn't like it. It's just like at that moment in my life, I was so busy. I stopped playing video games. I stopped buying comics.
Yeah.
I was like school.
But just
So-
checking, you did have the original He-Man run, the 80s
Oh, yeah,
line, right?
yeah.
You were on the He-Man fever there. I remember buying a couple of the He-Man and Space toys, the 1990 run that John Hastings mentioned on the last episode of Jeff Has Cool Friends. And for whatever reason, I had this plot with Keldor conflated with the two. And so then when I was doing research for this show, I was like, wait a minute, that's not what I'm thinking of. Those toys don't line up with this show.
No, the
which
New
is very
Adventures
interesting.
was like space pirates. It was
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. Keldor came with 2000X. I was like a totally original idea of like, where did Skeletor come from? He's not just like a random interdimensional like bad guy that just shows up. It's like, let's give him an actual like, some to make him more relatable, which is has a human face,
yeah, he was a human, and then he got his head melted, and and then they started creating like the brother of Randor thing and everything like that, which is a really fascinating thing. Now, so with this 2000X line, right? So like, I was also in college, but I was not in it for animation. I was actually like that. I had just started getting medicated, so school became very easy for me at a time when like school had been very hard and time consuming. And then when I finally, you hate bringing up like ADHD. It's so popular to talk about it on social media nowadays and use it for reasons why you're a bad person. But like when I got diagnosed and medicated for it, all of a sudden I had probably like 4 hours of more free time every week because I wasn't suffering with all that stuff, right? So I also was a Toy Fair reader. And when they did like the announcement of the 2000X line, or at that time, I think it was just like a Masters of the Universe relaunch is what they called it. And they talked about the Four Horsemen and all this, and they showed the designs. I read about it first, and I was like, this is extremely my shit.
Yeah.
I need this so bad. Yeah. So I did. I went out and got them, and I found out that there were like color variants and stuff. Now, one of the problems was that just like Mattel did in 1982 and the further years, He-Man and Skeletor became peg warmers, and all of the villains that you wanted to get were like kind of short packed. He-Man is the least interesting part of He-Man, in my opinion. Like, as far as visually, he's like the base level, right? And so like you'd go to the stores, you'd go to your Walmarts or your, KB or whatever. And like all the Stratoses and Whiplashes and all that, like that was at the time when like villains in any toy line just became valuable because they were short packed. And that actually did harm the line. That He-Man and Skeletor were overproduced. There's a very famous variant of Skeletor that came out around this time that has since become
have it here.
very popular. Huh?
I have it, and I forgot it's at a friend's house. I can't say why, but Tweeterhead would be doing a Skeletor variant based on that one, and I may or may not have left it with the painter, so don't have it here. Dang it.
Well, at least we got a not announcement on this show that I'm not legally allowed to say you made an announcement for, but there is a Skeletor variant that came out that is now popularly referred to as Disco Skeletor.
Yeah.
Disco Skeletor had the weirdest, it was just a repaint of Skeletor with orange, blue, gold, and purple color scheme.
This is just checking that this may or may not be coming out somewhere sometime in the near future.
I don't know
Dave.
what you're talking about, Dre, but to keep talking about what Jeff is talking about to not put a spotlight on that. But yeah, like it was like I'm colorblind, so I think his chest was either blue or purple. But
Sorry to get into the weeds. This is what I do. in the show, I go behind the scenes. I always peek behind the curtain. I break the fourth wall. Sorry, Jeff. So I've been laughing because this season of Nerd, invariably one of the hosts, we've had 3 people on all the shows, invariably one of them starts going quiet and you discover it's because they're on eBay or they're looking at toys. And that's been me this episode. If you're like, Dre is not talking as much as he likes talking, and I'm looking at, the Skeletor, the Disco Skeletor He-Man figure with this, it's almost Bronco colorings because it's orange with purple and then gold.
Orange, purple, and
I
gold.
love this so much, Jeff.
It's
I
because
love this so much.
it was universally hated when it came out.
What?
Yeah.
And
People suck.
it is the Star Wars prequels of Masters of the Universe action figures. Everybody rebelled against it. And then 20 years later, everyone's like, that wasn't so bad, actually. Mondo.
I would say it like when it started with the prequels, it's like as if now all you remember is Darth Maul and how awesome Darth Maul is. That's Disco. I think Disco Skeletor is so cool. I hate the name. I mean, I kind of love the name, but I hate it because it's like Disco. I think that was Pixel Dan helped come up with that name, I think, or was it Val Staples? One of those 2 guys helped come up with that name for that crazy ass.
I don't know if we can attribute it to one of those 2 men. I think it actually might be message boards that create, like, sometimes that just happens.
Yeah.
Like it becomes the lexicon. So like Mondo, who does really great 6-scale figures as well, and Masters of the Universe. I remember we brought I specifically, when I used to host Unsealed and Revealed, I said, I want to do a Mondo. Like, they do great stuff, and Peter Santamaria, working with them has been such a great thing too. They did a Disco Skeletor variant.
Yeah, and they shoved in a ton of other cool swap outs like Terror Skeletor,
Terror Claws, right?
I don't know if Dragon Blast was in there, but they shoved in a few other things to get a lot of bang for your buck. But it's such a weird magical figure, and then they even brought it back in MOTU, the not Revolution, like the second one. Skeletor, there's a moment where it's like, you can tell it's like, that's Disco Skeletor, because it's like this weird spacey, cool sci-fi version of Skeletor during this weird magical, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's like this weird magical hybrid moment. It's like, boom, that's Disco Skeletor. Like, you can tell it's just like tweaked a little bit. It's freaking awesome.
When we talk revolutions and revelations, sorry to take a brief tangent there. We can't spend the whole show on them, but I did absolutely love them. I love the toy lines and stuff as well. They make good stuff. I mean, just hats off to Kevin Smith and crew for incorporating 40 years of He-Man. They include the movie, right? Who's the creepy guy that
Gwildor?
Gwildor shows up, right?
A Blade.
That's great
They
stuff.
have a Blade cameo in that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. But yeah, and that's the thing. I'm sure I miss references, but there are so many references to so many things that show up in that show, which I think was just, it seemed like a fun game. It's like, we have 12 episodes. How many references can we, it's a weird improv game that is done really well, which, for any fan that's like, I'm a fan of this, I'm like, you should be getting a kick out of this, watching someone play with your favorite toys and tell a compelling narrative.
So something that is important to mention about this is a lot of the designs of 2000X are the designs that were used, or at least adapted, for Revelation. Clawful is a perfect example of that. Clawful in the original Mattel cartoon looks nothing like the action figure, and then the action figure that came out by Mattel. And then when the 2000X line came out, and we'll talk about when Clawful finally made it into that line, he was much bulkier, much hulkier, and that's the one that we ended up getting on Revelation. So that alone shows you how important and significant these designs are. They modernized the designs because He-Man is such a product of the 80s that by modernizing them and bringing them into the new millennium, and the Four Horsemen knowing exactly what to do to capture the current zeitgeist while giving love back, was so big. And calling back to Dre, this is the second time that referencing a golden version of a character caused somebody to go on eBay this season, when Adam Todd Brown went on and literally bought a golden-headed Destro while we were recording because he didn't know that there was a golden Destro. So like,
I am in love with Disco Skeletor, and I'll be keeping my ears to the internet. Is what
Dre,
I'll
I'm going to
say.
be 100% honest. You can get a mint carded 2000X Disco Skeletor. It might be the cheapest toy in that entire line.
Yes,
Not the
toys what I'll be
cheap
looking
line, but
for, Jeff. Toys.
it's extremely affordable in that line. When I bought mine, I bought a carded one that could open it up. So, because I always worry about buying loose ones, they're gonna be like, oh, they look mint, and then all the joints are loose or whatever. I'd rather buy like a card beater one, and rip it open out what we call toy jail. So I bought mine on card in toy jail. So it's definitely affordable. It might be going up just because of you know, whatever, but it's a cool. And there's some really fun, weird variants that you like the dragon armor, fire armor, Skeletor. Those are actually some of the variants actually I think I hated when they first came out, and then I've grown to love them because they're so weird and wacky and actually really cool looking.
That's actually what we're about to talk about. So I'm very excited that you brought that up because I'm going to start talking about waves. And the reason I'm going to talk about waves is because one of the things that you're going to see here more than I think in any toy line I've ever seen is variants and variants and then new armors and styles, right? While they're trying to get, so it's like, well, we got to make another He-Man and another Skeletor, and then we're going to add these characters, right? So there are 7 waves of Mattel, and then there are 6 waves, which they called series by NECA. Now, before I get into this, I'm going to say that the 7 waves by Mattel went from 2002 all the way up to 2004. In 2004, Mattel realized adult collectors were not doing enough for them to make money, and they decided to discontinue the line. The 4 Horsemen were doing great. They had a lot of designs ready to go. NECA was getting into the business in this regard, and they were like, can we continue the line? Mattel has the toy or action figure license, but they gave essentially permission to NECA to create mini statues that were pretty much the exact same scale, but just without points of articulation. And those are referred to now as sort of the Staction line. They're like, it's obviously a portmanteau of a statue and action figure. But man, let's talk about waves, gentlemen, because it gets wild fast. Our first wave in the summer of 2002, this was huge, is the most clearly obvious way to do this. 3 heroes, 3 villains, 2, a Battle Cat and a Panther, and then 2 different popular vehicles for each, right? And then Castle Grayskull. You have He-Man, Man-at-Arms, and Stratos on the good guy side, Beastman, Merman, Skeletor on the bad guy side. This is almost exactly 1982.
Just too short because it's not the 8-back, baby.
Yeah, that's right. And what they are missing is, I believe, Zodak. Zodak was like the mystery guy. That was like the guy that they didn't know.
The neutral power. Yeah.
And I am literally drawing a blank on the 8th character.
You're
talking on the original 82.
The original 1982. I'm like, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, and I'm looking at it. I can't look it up, but man, boy, do I feel stupid. I am stupid, but that's a different thing.
I'm drawing a blank too because I thought you would have that ready. And as you're listing off the names, like cool, and like Zodak, it wasn't Trapjaw. I think of Trapjaw. Tila. Boom.
You forgot Tila, Jeff.
I honestly thought she came out in a later run. I got stabbed for
Jeff
Tila.
Forgetting Tila is maybe that's why you repressed Tila, Jeff. It's not that you forgot you getting stabbed over Tila, which is the jet. It's hilarious how you both have clawful origin stories. Jeff's now infamous that we've repeated a couple times. I think you even said it on the I Must Break You this week, Jeff. But yeah, Jeff, you and your brother, I'll retell the story and then you can cut it, whatever. But you and your brother both got Easter baskets, weren't labeled. You thought one of you got Tila, one of you got Clawful. You didn't know who got what, and kids do what kids do.
Wouldn't you know it, my brother tattooed me in the trap muscle as a 3-year-old, and he was 5 with a pen because we both wanted Clawful and we didn't want the girl, and I won by DQ. So that's why I collect Clawful. Dave, you know this.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to talk another very funny thing. When Dave, we were at PowerCon, we both met Mark Taylor.
I didn't actually. You
didn't
went out. I'm a guy when I work at con, I never leave the booth because I'm always just worried about like the moment I leave the booth to go to the bathroom or go buy something is the moment someone really important I need to talk to comes by the booth and they never come back again. So I'm like, I'm shit at the booth. But I was like,
I
Jeff,
thought you
go.
did. Well, I mean, I did cover the booth sometimes, so
Yeah,
I just
no,
thought
I
you
don't
did.
mean this away from like how
Yeah.
good you were. I meant like
No,
I
no,
say
no.
often as possible. Yeah.
I thought you did. But another person that we met was a gentleman by the name of Ted Biaselli, worked for
Mhm.
Netflix, and he was talking to us. But, and here's something very, very interesting. Dave was with me when I found out I was going on the game show. We were driving to Anaheim. I got the phone call that I was going to be appearing on a Netflix game show. And so when I met Ted, I had to like run away from him
Yep.
because I didn't want any conflict of interest of knowing a Netflix related producer before I was on this thing. I wanted to protect that integrity. But he was like a really nice guy.
So you pulled a Prince Adam, right? Like where it's like suddenly shit's going down and they're like, where's Prince Adam? Why is he running away? What a
Yeah.
lazy or cowardly person. Like you did it. That's awesome, Jim.
I meant to say this earlier too, Dre, when you were talking about Kevin Smith and the Revolution shows, but I would say a huge architect. I mean, Ted, that was Ted's original idea. It was like, we need a new He-Man thing. I want to talk to Kevin about doing it. It was at Comic-Con, and Teddy is a super He-Man nerd. So a lot of those references and throwbacks, I would say probably weren't Kevin. Not to take away anything from what Kevin did for that show, but was Ted being like, we gotta get, and he actually voiced Wildor too. So when you were mentioning all this, I'm like, oh, I gotta reference Ted, and then we kept going, and then I'm like, all right, eventually, then Jeff's like, and Ted was there. I'm like, yeah, Ted is a huge reason why He-Man is big again because of that show, and that was his baby basically. So, anyways, yeah, it's funny, Jeff, when you mentioned that on the car ride down there. I'm usually driving a car with a friend sitting shotgun when they get a phone call of very important information, good or bad. Like you with the TV show, like zip lip, and then one time I was at a friend's wedding, I got a rental car, I was picking up another friend that landed, and as we get in the car, I'm like, how's it going? He's like, oh, this work. Picks up the phone. Work just had like 500 layoffs, and he was one of them. So he got the call like in the car. I was like, dude, why do I always get like important phone calls? Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But yours was great, and I was really happy to like celebrate that with you that weekend.
Yeah, it was funny because like I was on speakerphone at the time. So I was like, you're not really supposed to tell people about it, but I was like, well, there's nothing I could do about this. Like you were around when that call came through, but like that was actually very funny. But so Wave 2 came very quickly, and it was all they did is they did a repaint of He-Man, Jungle Attack. And then they added Ram Man and Mechanic. It was kind of a weak run, but then in part 3, then Wave 3 comes in, and this was like almost immediately, like they were almost concurrent. The way they came out, we added Smash Blade He-Man and Spin Blade Skeletor. So each wave is getting a new He-Man and a new Skeletor. Then Tila and Orko, Triclops and Trapjaw. This is where they start really pushing the chase color variants. They did that with Mechanic as well, but you would get like Orko had like the blue cloud with the orange ball, but you could also get an orange cloud with a blue ball, because that was back when like toy collecting really started getting away from just buying vintage toys, but to going for the more modern stuff. But we also got, and this is just so fun and so indicative of what they were doing at this point in time, the samurai figure. So if you're wondering if anime really did have a mega influence on here, well, folks, there is a samurai He-Man, a samurai Man-at-Arms, a samurai Skeletor, a samurai Battle Cat, and a samurai Battle Raptor.
This is also, I'm forgetting, whenever Turtles in Time was like the third or fourth name, but the third Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Yeah, just samurai, like you have to have a samurai version of your toys.
Yeah, that was like
2000s.
1993.
Oh, man.
Oh, that was that old? Wow.
Yeah. Ninja Turtles 3 came out around 1993, I want to say. But again, this was like anime was all the rage. Like, why would they not do that? They've already used the inspiration of Japan for sort of a lot of the style. And to the point now where like even Mattel agreed that it is an anime style. They actually used that in their own descriptions. Like they weren't
I think even it went so far as the Four Horsemen's original designs were a little bit rounder, more realistic, and like, no, make it more angular, more anime. Dragon Ball Z is huge and all. It's like, so like infuse a little bit of Dragon Ball Z, even like the style of the anatomy and stuff, because you can tell if you look at like the statues of figures for this and how angular they are, then you look like Four Horsemen's Mythic Legions a little bit more rounded and I want to say like hyper realistic. It's like, oh, you could tell where like this is where they wanted to go and this is what they were told to do.
Can I ask a question that's going to get me in trouble being the type of person we've been mocking, but I'll be one of those.
No,
I do love this style. Like the 2000X style is great.
Yeah,
In fact, I inadvertently did this. I picked up a He-Man and a Skeletor for my kiddo. I did buy some vintage. Like I found like an old Orko. If you're not looking for on card, you can get the vintage ones pretty cheap. And I was looking for a Skeletor and I was like, what's a good one to buy? And I actually asked Jeff and then I asked Dan Larson. And I wound up just buying a reprint of a 2000X Skeletor just because I liked the look of it the best. Like Jeff even told me, it's like, hey, just so you're aware, if you're buying a He-Man Skeletor, that's a 2000X, Origins reprint. But I'm like, yeah, it's just the coolest looking one, which I really dug. And like I said, Revelation, I absolutely dig the style and the throwback, and finding out that it's based on this makes a whole lot of sense, including, He-Man being Prince Adam being a teenager, out of costume. Did not like the Battle Cat armor in this one. And I know back in Revelation, they go back to the rhinoceros horn. Am I on an island there or am I just being, am I being that person that's just too much on my nostalgia kick?
No, I agree. I think there's two things I didn't like in 2000X. It was Battle-Cat's armor design, and then I wasn't a big fan of the Egyptian-themed sorceress or goddess or whatever you want to call it. But I know a lot of people love that look for her. It just felt a little bit, like, too far for me. But, like, everything else, I was like, chef's kiss perfection. Like, Stinkor is one of the best. Like,
the Stinkor design was so good, yeah.
Yeah, you can't do a better trap job, period. Buzz-Off looks cooler, more insectoid. Ratlore, who's one of my favorites as a kid, like the original vintage one, like the upgrade to him in 2000X where he's General Ratlore and he's like huge and massive. I'm like, yeah, clawful. There's so many things in 2000X. I'm like, nope, that's perfect. And even like thinking of like when I was working on Tweeterhead stuff, it was like, I'm never going to make anything better than what they did. So I'm just going to make a different version. Like to me, it was always just make it different. I can't make it better because they're just like, to me, perfect, Can
I throw out a funny Ratlore story? This is just hilarious to me. So my mom is the big reason I'm into He-Man, as with, I'm sure, all of us, right? You're a kid, so the only way you get into these is if your parents are on board and buy them for you. So I had a bunch of old He-Man toys, including an old Ratlore that my kid liked. And the old Ratlore's awesome because there's a button on his back and his neck springs up. They did a reproduction of Ratlore, but he doesn't have the spring. Yes, that's perfect. But the newest one, like whatever recent reprint, does not have the spring neck. It has one that it basically you can remove the neck and put the longer one, or remove it and put it back. I bought that for my mom bought that for my kid, not realizing it. And when I showed it, she was like, it doesn't have the spring neck. And so I bought my mom a spring neck Ratlore. She was like, which of my kids sent me a Rattler? And I was like,
which of my kids did that? Yeah.
Yeah. Who do I hate the most now? I think it made sense why they did it, to save on tooling. So then I have to like make a whole new inner mechanism for the thing. Like part of me hates a lot of the spring action features, like kind of cool. But then when I want to pose a thing, they have spring action arms. I can't like pose their arms up. I have to hit a button and hold it. So like, I like it when I'm kind of like maybe on a smaller island of, I liked as a kid, but as an adult, I don't want spring action, anything unless it shoots a missile. That's like my spring action. I want like a spring shot, like G.I. Joe missile launcher, and that's it. Everything else, I'm like, I want to be able to pose it. I want to be able to swap this, extend this, whatever. So that's my controversy.
Where do you stand, Jeff? Let's be the tiebreaker. Are you for vintage original? It's a toy. It's got the spring action thing. It's eventually going to wear out and go bad. Or are you the adult collector? It looks better on the wall if you can just pose it.
I think toys are made to be played with. And while I understand the posing aspect of us as adults, they should. I like collecting a toy as opposed, like, I much prefer a toy to a statue because I don't like Dave. No, but because the nostalgia for me is like playing, like remembering Tongue Lash or with the dial going up and down. Like when they did the reboot, it wasn't that. They didn't have the action figure.
Let me show you why this doesn't work. I want the arm straight. Nope, it's only gonna ever be like that. It springs. oh, I want to open the mouth. Oh, no, it goes shut no matter what. He can never
So
be.
he's holding up a
This is an
trap jaw.
audio medium. Dave is showing off an amazing trap jaw
2000X
figure. I'll
trap
just
jaw.
say that.
But also the thing about it is, Dave, is that you are coming at it from an adult perspective. Whereas like I like the kid idea of like it's a toy. That's why I love it. I don't love He-Man because I bought them as a kid and kept them on display. I love He-Man as a kid because I played with them.
Oh,
You know,
100%
like,
agree. This is
or
where we're
I
going
like
to
that.
debate, because I think to me that almost it's a kind of play, but then prevents other play. I'm not saying like pose it, hold it like that, but like if I want to like have my guy jumping at you with arms back on this other guy, I have to like hold this thing awkwardly, holding the button so the arms are up. Like I don't know. So to me, it's like it's limited toy play to enhance another kind of a toy play. So it's just like, are you a Pepsi toy play or are you a Coke toy play? You know,
Yeah.
that's my thing.
It's also important to note too that I'm going through the store waves, like the stuff you could buy at retail.
Yeah.
There are exclusives that come out, several of which I actually do currently own, which is fun, which we can talk about once we get through here. But
Yeah.
so looking through here, right, when we get into wave 5, or excuse me, wave 4, we have Martial Arts He-Man, Prince Adams, Cyclone, Battle Glove Man-at-Arms, and Faker, right? I believe Faker was
I think
Faker,
he was an exclusive.
he was a Toy Fair exclusive.
Yeah, I think he was.
Yeah, they really are dropping the ball on having good villains to go with. And Faker is definitely a cool one, and it has been used well multiple times. Really used well in the more recent ones. And I saw a really funny like meme thing recently making fun of Lego, but you know, plug in any toy company. It's just like, what's our plan? It's like, let's just assume our fans have infinite money and will keep spending. And I am, as you are reading through the waves, Jeff, I'm seeing that, right? Where we've got a Smash Blade He-Man. We have deluxe variants of He-Man and Skeletor. And it is fascinating because, like I said, if you go all the way back to 1981, the first episode is literally Skeletor saying, I am going to show off all of my villains. The first episode is, look at these awesome villains you can have and look at these awesome play sets. We see Snake Mountain and Castle Grayskull. And, you know, it's funny. I know, Dave, you're a big Merman fan. I think he shows up second. It goes Trap John Merman, show up like first and second. And then in this line, they're like, everybody is just going to love getting variants of He-Man and Skeletor. And
Because now then in wave 5, so we're after a year, we've already got like 5 different variants of these fine gentlemen, which is real fun because now in wave,
and none of them are battle armor. Like they don't even get to like the original variant, just battle armor. They wait until
because you're right. When we go look at the original run, it's He-Man and Skeletor, then it's Battle Armor He-Man and Skeletor, then it's I believe Thunder Punch and
Terror Claws.
I think Terror Claws was like the Bolo, the one with the golden armor. There's Dragon Blaster. So, but it's like pretty limited for all intents and purposes. With this one, we're on our 5th wave, and we've already got Ice Armor He-Man, Fire Armor Skeletor. We finally get Evelyn, Too Bad, Whiplash. So all those bad guys, plus repaints of the short pack guys, and a Keldor exclusive that I think was from Comic-Con, and Mossman from Toy Fair. So you can Toy Fair loved doing mail-aways at this time, and those things are worth a fortune. We got a Manny Faces, Roboto, a new Stratos called Sky Strike. We do get Mega Punch He-Man,
which is like the big fist, right?
Yeah, which is like kind of like Thunder
Flying
Punch
Fist or anything. It's like, they still haven't even done 4 variants in the original toy line. Like, we're not going to touch those. We're just going to give you all new shit because, man, people loved when we do it with the Batman toys. Wasn't that like Batman? We're like, oh, Ice Armor Batman. It's like the movie, but not the movie, or whatever. That's
so funny. Like
thinking, you know.
And sorry to jump us because you're getting us through the waves. The good news is, unlike Power of the Force, Jeff, which has 3 billion, we're almost through. But I did want to something very odd about this run. I think maybe it's just canceled early. Is we get a slime pit for the Evil Warriors in Wave 4, but that is a shocking part of this run. Is we only get one Grayskull, and it does not, I mean, sorry to be the snob, sorry to be this guy. The initial Grayskull is one of the most amazing toy accomplishments ever done.
And it's still considered one of the like main examples of how to do it.
Yeah. And Snake Mountain both variants, even the most recent, like Snake Mountain is I think it's an awesome toy, but it's definitely interesting, right? You know, had a bunch of pieces that just broke immediately. I know I broke the little cuff immediately, like day one. And I heard that's very common. The bridges are really, really hard. Even the new one, I did actually get the new Snake Mountain, and that one has all sorts of issues. But it is just kind of remarkable that in the reruns, they did not really focus on the play sets. Now, that could just be right. Like, these are adult collectors. They're not going to be as interested in play sets. And then, yeah, we don't ever really get a great villain play set by the end of this run.
I would like to add, too, what I thought you were going to say is that we got a slime pit and we didn't get the horde yet.
Horde. Yeah,
the
you get
slime
the horde
pit was the horde.
only. Yeah, it's like, why? Why? Here's your Mantisaur. No horde. All right. I mean, not that they did that, but it's like, yeah, we'll give you this slime pit. We'll give you the fear zone, whatever.
The fright zone. Yeah. The reality of it is the slime pit is also considered like a fan favorite. So they're like going to do that because they know they're going to make money off of it. Right.
Yeah.
Now we also get Shield Strike He-Man. So we have Ice Armor He-Man and Shield Strike He-Man in the same exact run, and we get Buzz Off, right? We also finally get the Battle Armor He-Man and Skeletor. Finally.
Did we? I thought
Yes, they were deluxe.
He-Man was a staction. I thought we never got a Skeletor battle armor.
It was deluxe, so it was one of the bigger ones. Not bigger in size, but like a bigger like package, you know. But we also got, and this is where you're sitting there and you're like, all right, calm down. There was a gift set that came out with Wolf Armor He-Man and Snake Armor Skeletor.
Yeah. I remember that.
Okay.
Why?
And then we have our final wave, which was
and in terms of play, and by the way, this gets even more ridiculous. We get the slime pit the wave before. On this wave, we get the battle station, which is an attachment you can throw onto Grayskull.
Yep.
And then I guess 2.0 of Grayskull Slide. I don't know what the difference. There were two Grayskulls that came out. So again, this weird thing of let's give 1 billion variants to He-Man. Let's give 2 variants to Grayskull. Let's give an upgrade to Grayskull. Never give a Snake Mountain. And it is just really weird for how much market research this was. I think a comment we didn't make comes up on the Dan Larson shows. This was the like early internet where fans complaining nicely, whatever you want to call it, like corporations like, whoa, fans are really into this. And I think the classic model is corporations sometimes misread the volume or excitement on the internet for dollars, right?
Loud people on the internet do not spend the money that they say they're going to spend the money on.
The people that scream the loudest are usually the people that like spend the least amount of money. They want something to be like an authority on, you know. I'm an authority, I'm important. Like, okay, like you're important, but you don't represent everyone. No. I'm in these groups, I know these things. That it's like, dude, this doesn't, like, you might know, but you might not know. And to act like you know everything is, I try to approach things like, and that's why you do market research. We should act like we don't know to a degree. We should go in with some sort of confidence. Let's triple check it against this, and this. Not like assume you gotta do this is what fans want. Maybe they want it. Like I had this discussion with Chad. He keeps thinking of like
Chad from Tweeterhead.
Yeah, Chad is the owner of Tweeterhead, my boss at Tweeterhead. And he's more familiar with classic He-Man, not 2000X and on. And he still considers, he's like, no, Scareglow was like last wave short package. No one likes Scareglow. I'm like, dude, everyone loves Scareglow. Like now, went from C, D tier character when he first came out to like now he's like an A tier character.
Well, my son absolutely loves Scareglow in the recent 2 shows. And
Tony
I forget
Todd, right?
Yeah, whoever made them. Like, what's the toy company that made the most recent runs that are everywhere? The Revolution,
Mattel?
Revelation. Mattel. Yeah. Is it just straight Mattel?
Yeah.
Mattel has those in stores. Like, that's them. Like, and it's an awesome toy. He's got. This is a weird one, Jeff. He actually has a cloth cape, but it works. He has a cloth cape, an amazing staff. He looks great. So, like, yeah, the modern Scareglow looks amazing. Is awesome on the show. It's a great figure.
Scareglow is a fascinating character because he also had this massive amount of mystery behind him because of what his description was on the original packaging.
Yeah. The original cross-sell art. Yeah.
It said that he was like Skeletor's like evil ghost or something like
another
that.
dimension. Like Skeletor summons him and Ninjor, and then describes like, you know, evil Skeletor goes from another dimension.
Evil ghost of Skeletor. And everyone's like, what the hell does that mean? Like, is it Skeletor died? Because he looks like Skeletor, but he glows. So, like,
Yeah.
did Skeletor die and this is his ghost come back? Or is he a ghost being controlled by Skeletor?
Yeah. And then it was in the classics toy line, which is the best Scareglow to date, I think. Like I don't know if it was the Four Horsemen or someone at Mattel that worked on like the card for like the bio card for him. They made him like a totally unique character. I think he was originally like, I'm totally paraphrasing. I messed this up, so someone's gonna correct me, but I thought he was like originally a bounty hunter or a guy, the bad guy that found this thing, got cursed, and that became Scareglow. So he had a human form, then Scareglow form. They made him completely separate from Skeletor. And then the Revolution show, they made him like
the god of the like Hades, basically.
yeah, like the guard too, or I forgot if he was like guarding to get to their was it Subternia or if it's
he's basically Hades. Like
Tony Todd voiced
yeah.
him.
Tony Todd, which was so incredible, right? Yeah, like he kind of has a little bit of like Ghost Rider energy in that regard of like a man cursed to be this, sort of like doing the bid of evil, but existing in their own way. Now, there was the last wave, excuse me, I believe that maybe the second last wave, the last two waves were the Snake Men. And these are sort of the most collectible versions of this because as we know in toy collecting, or if you don't know, this is fun. In toy collecting, usually the last waves of something are going to be the most valuable because they're the least purchased.
Yeah.
Anything that exists.
Scareglow from the original toy line. He's like Ninjor. He's up there too.
Yep.
King
Sorceress, Randor, Scareglow, Buzzsaw, Hordak, like any of those late run guys, they're so valuable because people never got them. Real Ghostbusters, we see that with the Ectoglow. Basically, the WWF cards, the Hasbro WWF toys from the 90s, those like yellow and green cards at the end. Like, that's a very common thing. So, the versus the Snake Men, it's the first time we get new cards. They're green. And we get Battle Fist, who is the character Fisto, but there was apparently a legal issue because of George Lucas creating a character named Kit Fisto.
I didn't know that was the reason. I just thought they're like, Fisto wasn't cool sounding. Let's go with Battle Fist. I didn't know it was actually the Lucas Fisto thing.
It was one of those things where I think Mattel was like, we need to not do this because they made this character Kit Fisto. And we probably shouldn't go up against George Lucas.
Yeah.
And again, I think probably, Dave, to your credit, in the boardroom, if I was going to like imagine what it was like when they made that decision, somebody probably said, yeah, Fisto's a pretty weighted name anyway at this point in time. I don't mind shifting that.
Yeah, even I'm shocked they didn't do it with Ram Man, just like call him like, not Juggernaut or something.
Yeah.
What's that? Like, I mean, I love those names at the same time. Like, this is not to get all over the place, but like, if I were to make a Game of Thrones, like not R-rated, but like Lord of the Rings, serious fantasy TV show, movie, live action take on He-Man, it's like, can you say Fisto in that world without giggling? Can you say Ram Man in that world without giggling? Like Trapjaw's cool, Merman's fine, Beastman's cool, Evelyn's fine. He-Man still like He-Man. It's like, all right, cool. We have to work back to the He-Man, but like, there's a couple names. It's like, do we keep this name or do we try and like push a new direction and maybe this is the name they're called as a joke? Like if someone Battle Fist, they remember we called him Fisto in college because he's an idiot. Like that's like the throwaway line. Like, oh, see, they not Fisto. Like, how do you do that? I don't even know how you would handle that.
Yeah, he says something and then somebody goes, okay, Fisto.
Yeah.
Or whatever, it's Battle Fist.
Yeah.
So we got him. He actually ended up, there's a repaint of him or like a variant of him that is actually, I think it's considered the rarest action figure of this entire line.
Is it that one or is it like the blood? Isn't there a Skeletor with like a red, like it's international there that have like a blood painted on him?
There might be. I guess I'm talking just American.
Gotcha.
American runs. I think that only had a run of like 500.
So you wouldn't count Megator or Titus in the original line because they were only released internationally. They were never released in America.
I would count that if something is regional. Yeah, actually, kind of. Actually, yes, because I don't consider it if it's just a European release. Same thing with the laser He-Man and laser Skeletor. Like
Yeah.
Jeff is
So-
a He-Man snob, which we respect around here.
No, but
That's
it's like if something's not available, like it's not that it was short packed, it's just that it wasn't sold in an entire nation that created it because it was dead. Yeah, I do consider that to be more of an asterisk. So we get Serpent Claw Man, and you're going to notice a theme here. Serpent Claw Man at Arms, Serpent Track Mechanic, Snake Hunter He-Man, Sky Strike Stratos, and we finally get a Zodak. Zodak took
Finally,
a while.
the
People
original
were-
8-back done character 96.
Yeah, exactly. For the Evil Warriors, we have Snake Crush Skeletor, a Whiplash, a Too Bad, and a Triclops repaints, right? But we also have Snake Men, King Hiss, Snake Tila. That's a Toy Fair exclusive, I believe.
Yeah.
The General, and then Venom spitting Cobra Khan. And there are
Can I ask a weird question? Because I did my best. I did
Better
my
be
best
weird.
to.
Let it be weird.
better be weird.
It's not. It's going to be boring. I did my best to read through like He-Man 2002, the show. I was like, maybe I'll watch all this, and I watched like 2 episodes, and I was like, maybe I'll read what happens with Tila, where because she's listed as a Snake Man, like okay,
She gets
and evil, and I know that's interesting because like if we go back to the original Toylet, it's definitely fascinating where she's got the snake hood just kind of arbitrarily, and in the show they're like, yeah, I don't know, that was the toy. The toy doesn't have to line up with the show.
yeah.
So do either of you know the canon in the show as to what happens? Does she get like infected with snake powers or something?
I believe so because okay, so Tila is actually a synthesized character. She was originally going to be called the Snake Goddess.
Or just goddess. I think it was
huh?
goddess. Right. Or was it snake goddess?
I think it was Snake Goddess. It might be Goddess. Actually, Dave,
Or green god. It was never snake. It was either green goddess or goddess. It was one of those two.
but
Yeah.
it was very, and then they just were like, we're just going to make that Tila, right? So then when you see, which by the way, Dave, side note, and I'm sorry to do another side note thing, at Mint on Card, which is the comedy show that I do every second Friday at Blast from the Past on beautiful Magnolia in Burbank, California, lots of Masters of the Universe stuff there. They had directly next to me, somebody had moved and sold their Tweeterhead Tila statue. So I'm trying to talk and do my set, and I'm just like, hey, I did all the social media for that toy.
You had my favorite social media post too. And this is when you were first starting with Tweeterhead, and I appreciate it. Chad doesn't have the same sense of humor you and I do. But you posted a picture of your original Tila toy, and you're like, word balloon. What did it say? Like, you should totally check your newsletter tomorrow or something.
Yeah, newsletter coming in tomorrow. Keep it checked.
Yeah. Yeah, it was hilarious to me because it's still like it like it was just awesome. Chad's like, who would care to like look at the picture of a toy? It's like, dude, it's like getting people. It's like a clue because obviously it's Tila, and then it's like funny, and that's this old, like the original toy, and then we're doing this beautiful high end, upgraded, updated statue. It's like you go from this to that. It's like it was awesome. Anyways, yeah, Jeff,
It also has the largest increase in signups for the newsletter that you guys had at that point in time.
up until
Putting that out there.
Oh, weird. Who did that? Was that you?
Nobody knows. No, but I loved doing that. I loved working on that project and everything like that. But back to that. So Tila has always been sort of forced to have the snake connection. So when they released the Snake Men and they wanted to start doing stuff, it makes sense to bring her into it as sort of a victim of that lore. But I do not remember the actual specifics of the Snake Tila. So I do apologize to that. But it makes perfect sense.
I forgot if they got like cursed or what, but yeah, her and Man at Arms changed and they eventually changed back. But it was during like, I forgot if there's 3 seasons total, but it was in the last season when the Snake Men were coming up. They're starting to tease Hordak and the whole, like the next season was just to focus on like She-Ra and the Horde more. But yeah, it was, I'm not a big fan of like Snake Man at Arms or Snake Tila, kind of like they have a snake head. Like, all right, cool. Like, I don't know.
I think
that happened in both
Tila-
series, right? Like this weird thing with going from they're all like Skeletor is at Snake Mountain and not Castle Grayskull, the giant skull. That's fine.
Yeah.
And then these snake people like King Hiss and stuff come in, and I guess they retake Snake Mountain, but it that is a hilarious part of like He-Man where you're just like, so the Skeletor guy, is he at the giant skull place? Nah, he's in the snake place. They're like, what about the snakes? They're like, don't worry about it. Like, what about the Horde? They're like, listen, he turns into a rocket. I don't know. It's a whole thing.
Hey, you're asking questions, kids. Shut up and enjoy the show. Like, Here's
Also-
a mechanical elephant head guy that's a firefighter. Okay, thanks. You know?
Talk about a sort of accidental confluence of good storytelling to bail on the idea of Tila being a snake-themed goddess originally during that run, and then to have the Snake Men be a powerful faction later and being like, wait, shit, we can use this. We got a history of something. And then it's like, oh yeah, and also Tila is the sorceress's daughter. Of course she'd be connected to some sort of magical history. So like, it's actually very interesting. It is very interesting that that is something that was later used. So like, while I'm not stoked on like a snake man at arms concept, I think he was actually like snake capture man at arms or whatever, serpent claw. I like Snake Tila because it really is a throwback to the original storyline that they were working with that then they abandoned.
I wasn't as big of a fan of like Tila from 2000X being cursed and looking like a snake. I was more a fan of when they brought back Cobra Hood Tila as the new goddess in the comic books, and she's like super sexy and has the bitchin' ass Cobra Hood. Finally, they kind of like they brought that back in that way. So I agree with you, Jeff. Different context of a different moment when it's used in a different way. So
Our final Mattel line.
Oh, wait. Sorry, Jeff. I keep doing this on the lines. I will throw this out. Classic design that they finally bring in Wave 6, the Battle Bones Transport, which is from the original line, which is awesome. It's like, it looks like a dinosaur skeleton.
It's a suitcase for your toys, basically.
That you can attach. Like, that's the thing. Battle Bones Transport and the original Castle Grayskull are both amazing in that they are essentially like sets, right? That are also like functional. Like that's what puts them together to be so rad, because the original Grayskull, it's a carrying case for all your action figures that is also an amazing play set. So, but again, Zodak and Battle Bones Transport wait until the series is about to die to finally show up. But we have 20 different colorings of He-Man and Skeletor to play with.
Battle Bones rips. I loved Battle Bones as a kid.
It's awesome.
Because the mouth opened and you could put all your weapons in there, which I thought was so awesome.
It was also like, for me as a kid, like I like getting along with everyone in the box arts, like it's good and bad guys all hanging out on Battle Bones at the same time. Part of me was confused. Part of me was like, oh look, Battle Bones brought everyone together. I
think they were actually two Battle Bones walking at each other, and one was the good guy Battle Bones and one was the bad guy Battle Bones, if I recall. And that's so awesome. Like it's like a bus that like a giant dinosaur bone bus taking these guys to where they got to go. So our final, also, by the way, Stratos is basically Sean Connery. Like they created this.
Oh, yeah, the voice.
He has another release in this run, which is Claw Attack Stratos. So this dude's getting mega like importance. I think he's like considered royalty of his race in that cartoon.
Yeah.
We have a Manny Faces repaint, another He-Man, Mecha Blade He-Man, a Mechanic repaint, a She-Ra Toy Fair exclusive, Snake Armor He-Man, Cyclone, and Trap and Smash Orko. So we got another Orko, Ice Armor Skeletor, Mecha Blade Skeletor, and the Blood Red repaint that you were talking about.
There you go.
In there. And at that point in time, we're also not on my list that I went for, but we forgot about the Keldor exclusive. And there was also
that showed up in Wave 5, I believe. You did. I think you did mention Keldor, but I don't think.
I did. I'm sorry. That's my bad.
But you didn't. I don't know if you mentioned he's exclusive. And that, to me, as we're talking back over this, it is. I am laughing because I'm looking at the same place as you. I'm assuming, Jeff, if you're looking at a different site, let me know. But He-Man.fandom.com has the list, which is great. And as I'm reading, I'm like, oh yes, that makes sense. Absolutely release Keldor now. I'm laughing that it's in Wave 5, but let's be fair. This is happening relatively quickly, right? We start in summer of 2002. Wave 5 only takes summer of 2003. Now, again, this is getting rather ambitious to say, let's throw 30 different toys at kids in the span, even 20-year-olds, like in the span of a year. Like so much money.
This ends before the spring of 2004.
Which is ridiculous.
Summer of 2002 to the spring of 2004.
Yeah. But so what's funny is like all of the ones I'm like, oh, that makes sense that they finally included that character, right? We finally have Keldor. We finally have this. And you're like, oh, that was an exclusive, right? That was one you can only get there. And that just makes me laugh, where it's just going, I don't know the market research or how they went with this. And that's always a hard one. You both have way more experience than I do in the toy game as to, what gets the green light and what's decided. but with the benefit of hindsight, looking back on this, just going like, you have a lot of cool characters that were exclusive, that were hard to get, and then you have a lot of mainstream toys that someone already has. Like I as a kid or even a teenager, I would imagine I would say, why do I need to buy this He-Man? I already have two. Like, I don't need a third He-Man, but I could really use a Keldor for my Randor to fight. But wait, Randor is exclusive as well. So
Yeah,
who
that
gets
was
to
a
fight?
thing with like McFarlane toys because I was a huge McFarlane toy collector. Like my bedroom back in my parents' house in Colorado Springs, I kept it the way it is. I would be that guy that's like, here's all 6 original spawns, mint on card, like pinned on my wall. Then here's the the dupe I bought, ripped open, whatever. So I had like all the variants of everything. I was like one of those hyper collectors. But they would always, like in later runs especially, they would short package the coolest character, like the sexy chick when they started to go like way more realistic with like their sculpts
Yeah.
and stuff. It's like, why not short package the weirdest one or the variant or whatever? Make that the chase figure instead of like the cool, unique one that everyone wants. It's like, to me, it's like I would do it the other way. Like make all the cool characters readily available and then make the oh, this is the extra Stratos that you don't really need. Make that the short package chase one that's like 1 in 100.
Yeah,
Make
it should
variant.
also, honestly, it should be the He-Man, the new armor.
Yeah.
Mecha Blade He-Man should be the short print because like
Yeah,
you've
100%.
already got He-Man and Skeletor warming the pegs. And pardon me for using that phrase peg warmer without defining it, but that's considered something like if you go into a store, the one character that just never continues to sell and it just exists holding up space in the toy
You know
aisle.
what? You know what peg warmer means? You don't deserve to listen to this show. Just log off, delete your
No,
account.
no, that's not true. That's not true. No, stay. This, Dre. I don't know if you know this, but we actually have producers on this show. You know that? We do. We do. We have producers on the show. So we should actually give a quick little shout out because we have a couple of people who, and you can do this too. Head on over to patreon.com/JeffMay and you can be a producer of Nerd with Dre and Jeff. And I want to give a big shout out. Do you mind if I start first?
You can go first, Jeff.
All right, we're going to shout out to the Enchanted Wandering Unpierced Left Nipple Cider served at room temperature. Shout him out. Shout out to Norm from Cheers, a member of the coveted 3-face tier, which is, that's top tier right there. Quite literally, that's top tier. Shout out to Bimmy and Jimmy out fighting crime. And drinkwithmikeslater.com every time Dre plugs the back catalog.
Apparently, I like doing that. By the way, I'll keep going and I'll say this, Mike, because I get to do this now. I missed a chance, but I was going to shout out Mega Man 2, the Mega Man 2 episode of Nerd at the very beginning of this show when we were talking about how these people just absolutely loved the property and kept going. I missed my chance to say a lot like Mega Man 2, but Mike, you gave me the window, so I am back with it. I'm going to double shout out Bimmy and Jimmy out fighting crime for both not changing his name in time and sending some amazing cards, because you can also check out Jeff Has Cool Cards, where Jeff breaks cards. Sorry, Jeff, I am double dipping. Let's continue. I'm going to start calling Yoda Old Grogu just to see what happens. To make Mike drink a little more, I'm going to shout out the last episode of Jeff Has Cool Friends, where Jeff discusses various places that Dave may be familiar with, where discussing Yoda as Old Grogu or the baby or whatever.
We couldn't call it. Remember? Do you remember that? We got a memo that said if we call, I don't know, maybe you didn't, Dave, because you weren't on air the way I was, but we got a memo being like, if you call the child Baby Yoda, you are going to get in a ton of trouble.
Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah,
The Mandalorian, did you see him in his interview? He got in trouble. He actually said, like, Baby Yoda was like, oh no. Like, so the main star of The Mandalorian.
I'm really
like,
worried about him getting fired from that show. Not. It's like, of all the bulletproof people in the world, like that guy, yeah, it's just like.
Yeah, it's because he's got the upgraded armor that's bulletproof. I watch the show. All right. Shout out to Burrito. Shout out to Ricky Cilantro. Shout out to Dan's Ninja Turtle Ooze. That is my brother. And Jeff, I get to counter your Clawful story with a much more boring version. So for Easter, right around that time that movie Batman came out, my parents actually tracked down one of the Batman figures that had the utility. You know, if you remember, it had like a grappling hook that came out of the utility belt. Was an awesome, awesome toy. Just one of the absolute best. Jeff may even have it. It looks like Jeff's reaching for something, so I'm not sure. We got that. We had the exact same Easter screw up I thought I got it. I was like, my parents knew I wanted this Batman toy. How amazing. And they were actually like, actually, that was for your brother. And the end of that story is he got the toy. So much more boring story. And my brother Dan is amazing. And yeah, we have another story where I am the villain about how I dumped out his Ninja Turtle ooze. And I do remember, much like the slime pit, I remember that toy. I had a friend who had that with the slime, and it was like, you get to use the slime once and then it's gone forever.
And then it's
And
covered in your
finish-
80s carpet hair.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
best.
that stuff just like went into the carpet and was done. It was the worst thing ever. You know, I'd be really curious to talk to the original toy designers about any slime based thing. It's like, you hate parents, don't you? And they're like, we absolutely do. We hate them. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. And finally, shout out to Porcelain Jesus. You know, you could make some statues out of porcelain. That work to get us to NECA, Jeff? Maybe, I don't know.
I want, and thank you all again for being producers. Head on over to patreon.com/JeffMate if you want to produce this show. Now, there is some quick little, I'm just going to kind of run these off real quick. We had, when NECA took it over, these became stactions. They're statues. They are not what we think of when we think of an action figure. These are just mini statues in the same scale for display. Perfect. They realized this was for adult collectors anyway. We go for it. I finally get Clawful. After waiting for so long, there was a Clawful, and I was so happy. Of course, Dave is reaching for his Clawful.
What are you talking about? I'm not carefully moving my Ninja Turtles toys around to reach my Clawful.
You don't have to do that. We do not want a cascade of action figures on an all audio. There he is. That's the Clawful.
That's a small one.
Yeah. Look at
That
this.
is such a cool. That is so cool. That is
he's
so
great.
cool.
I do have that
Victor
carded.
Gale with Merman.
Yeah.
Boom.
So he's a big little beefy boy. We got Snout Spout and a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive King Randor, and we got Hordak. Then Clamp Champ, Stinkor, Grizzlor. Great run right there. 3 great characters. Then the Sorceress, including with a classic paint style. An Evelyn, including a classic paint style. Mantenna and Tongue Lashor. Series 4, Webstore. Then Leech, Snakeface. Series 5, Rio Blast, who might be the least Masters of the Universe character who's ever lived.
A lot of people love him. Like when I started working with Tweeterhead, I was hitting a bunch of my MOTU nerd friends. And like of the 8 hardcore fans I knew that were friends, 3 of them had Rio Blast in their top 5 favorite
He's
characters.
weird. He's a cowboy with cybernetic RoboCop guns in his body.
Yeah. But people love him. They're just like,
Is this just a Brave Star character they put in He-Man?
He does look like a Brave Star character.
Technically, it was probably before Brave Star, but like, yeah.
It would be, yeah. It would be right. It would actually be kind of like right around, like maybe a year before Brave Star. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Rio Blast, another Evelyn with Screech this time, and Squeeze, which
Hate the name.
a weird choice for a static statue. Squeeze is known for having big, long wraparound arms. And so adding that as a statue was weird. And then finally, we got a Battle Armor He-Man, the He-Man Classic style, a Randor Classic. Then we got Jitsu, which is the breakable one, and Mosquitor. So that's all the characters that they covered in there. Did they cover everybody? No. It's fine. They didn't get to. We got 3 more years, basically, of this happening for the fans. Nobody can complain about this. Personally, I don't think so. I think
It's so funny if you flipped it, right? If you flipped just the amount of time, it's about the same amount of time, about 2 years. This is this is for statues, but if this had been the action figure run, for the most part, right? I would have assumed you'd have like an initial run with a He-Man, a Skeletor, probably an Orko and Battle Cat. This is a pretty impressive run, balanced between good and evil, awesome looking ones, some of the cool characters. They are awesome figures, right? These look really cool. I will actually say, yeah, Squeeze is funny. I know that, like, because it's so hard to get because it's a statue and he's got these long arms, but looks really cool.
Yeah. The 2 I wish I could have gotten their version of would have been Spikor and Scareglow. You know, I don't even know if Spikor showed up in the show, and I know Scareglow didn't, because I know they redesigned Scareglow for that World comic book, and they got in trouble for that because I think Val told me they had a timeline to go to print, otherwise it wouldn't get made. They were going to hear back from Mattel, and he just like, all right, they'll hopefully say yes, print. Then they're like, no, you can't. So then he got in huge trouble for that because he's basically like, shipping out, this is Scareglow, and this is what it looks like this universe, like in this version of this universe. And Mattel wasn't happy about that going out prematurely or whatever. But that was our only look at Scareglow 2000X. I don't even know if Spike or there's one artist for his name, but Nate Barch, who's a good friend, and he's known for doing a lot of design stuff. He did some of the variant covers for the 2000X comic run, but he knows the name of the guy on, I think it was the He-Man.org forums. There's one artist who did like bio cards for all the 2000X style characters. And then the ones that were never done, he kind of like re-envisioned as 2000X. And he did a really cool one for like Spike and it was awesome. So I'm not sure if that was 100% his original or if it like he found concept art that was done by the Four Horsemen that was never used. But that guy did some really, he did a Scareglow one too. But yeah, there's like he did like so many designs in 2000X that was bio cards. I saved them, right click, saved as all of them. They're super cool. They're in my box of reference for whenever I'm looking at the next Legends Tweeterhead statue. It's always like one of the first things I go to, along with like all the vintage cross-sell art, original vintage toy.
We're
classics.
actually right about to talk about that. So
Cool.
I'm very excited that you brought that up. But I do want to say I can understand why Spike would never get made.
Nuh-uh.
Because what are these stactions made out of?
Resin.
They're made out of resin.
Brittle
Spike, the original
resin.
toy, was made with soft rubber so as not to cause any damage.
I don't like soft rubber. I think it was plastic. Soft. Some rubber, maybe.
No, the spikes were rubber.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
They were like a hard, or like if not, they were like a very soft plastic.
Check. Let me check my Spike where I just
Yeah,
have
like
it
that's
available.
not going to do any damage. Now, resin or polystone or whatever, you can't.
Oh, I
I
know.
don't think a toy company would be like comfortable. It would be like releasing a knife.
No, I know. I'm saying like.
But yes,
Also, resin and manufacturers come a long way. We can do like softer kind of stuff that's like you can do hybrids and blends and stuff. But yeah, I wish I got a Spike or wish I got.
you think Jitsu was breakable?
Yeah, no, Jitsu's, but Jitsu's
Imagine.
awesome.
I would have liked to, there's a couple that I would have liked to have seen that didn't get the treatment. And
Who?
I think Dragstore
Oh, Dragstore.
would have been like an interesting way to do the character because he's such a weird one. And from like the heroes, even though I don't like the toy, I would have loved to see what Extendar would have looked like.
That would be
Because you
cool.
can really
I
expand-
did a bio card on him, so you could see like what
Yeah.
he envisioned. I think 3 other ones I would have loved to see were the Giants of Megator and Titus. Then I would have loved to see a Granamir or done 2000X. That would have been freaking awesome.
Oh,
The
yeah.
little Ragans. But
yeah.
It would be cool though. I like the idea of because he's like you could think of him as like Juggernaut meets Knight in shining armor, but his everything like shoots out. Like it's awesome. I love the
Yeah.
idea of Extender is super cool to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. Now, Dave, so like obviously there, we had you on not just because you're a He-Man fan, but because you sort of are continuing the collector's market. You guys at Tweeterhead have really done a great job of building the MOTU line and keeping the collectibles, especially the higher end collectibles, at an affordable price point. I think it's really good. I'm glad I got to work on some of these projects and promote them and work on the social media when I had that chance. But like one of the things I noticed is how great you were at incorporating multiple designs. So like I'm honestly how did you go about when you were looking at like working on the design elements of these in relation to the 2000X line?
Yeah, so I think part of it is learn from your mistakes. Working at Sideshow, there are things I loved, and always as an artist who has looked back at older work, like, oh, we could have done this better, could have done this better. Everyone loved the He-Man Skeletor we did. Evelyn, I think, was the thing that went like a bridge too far in terms of redesign. Like you don't instantly recognize there's Evelyn. Some people do, but I think it wasn't as safe of a redesign as He-Man Skeletor. I think Shiro was a bit of a correction after that, which is great. But then Orca was like the transition figure between Tweeterhead and Sideshow. And then after Sideshow's license expired, because Chad and Tweeterhead, and I was still at Sideshow at the time, Orca was kind of like the beginning of the passing of the torch, was underneath Sideshow's license. After that, when that expired, and Chad was trying to acquire it on his own with the blessing of Sideshow, like, hey, can I continue this with Dave? Dave's going to work with me after hours. It's a non-compete because Sideshow's not making He-Man, and Sideshow sells Tweeterhead stuff. So I got my boss's blessing to work with Chad. Hordak was our first one. I was like, all right, Hordak's going to be the first Tweeterhead solo one. I want to learn from Evelyn, make sure there's undeniably Hordak, and really put together like a mood board of every version of Hordak, what I thought worked, what I thought didn't work. Because sometimes when you mix too many elements or too many things, like too many pretty colors, you get brown. So I want to make sure I wasn't doing like that's an analogy I use for a lot of stuff. So it's like, what are the core things that are instantly recognizable about Hordak that make him Hordak? I went with the hard thing with starting with Hordak was, do you go gray or do you go blue? Do you go robot head? Do you go monster head? And I'm like, I just feel like 2000X had it right with going like more of the gray, like the original toy.
Like the
going,
kind of bat. They leaned into the bat energy.
Yeah. I went more of that direction rather than the filmation, blue with the robot head. But then we did work in the robot head as like an exclusive swap out part. So it was like definitely do these 30,000 foot view represent them, and then as you get closer to the details, enhance and complement them rather than like take away or distract. I've always looked at certain movie redesigns and go, some movie redesigns are amazing, and then some become like just noise. You're just like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. It's just like a noise of detail. So I want to always avoid that. I'm a less is more guy. Try to find like, make sure things read silhouette, and again, 30,000 foot view wise, make sure instantly recognizable as that character. So Hordak was the first one. Tila was the second one. With monsters and villains, it's a little bit easier to like push things and make them look a little bit more like crazy, and it's more acceptable. With the females, as you like add too much clack or add too much this, it removes like the sexiness to them or whatever. You just gotta like, Tila was a harder balance. We biased a little bit more classic. I think I was also like dealing with PTSD of like the Evil Lyn, criticism.
I have so many things to hop in with. By the way, I'm going to say, so obviously you're saying I think we've mentioned this a bunch of times, but Tweeterhead, Sideshow, both have amazing collectibles. You've worked on a ton. You have to look up some, but I looked up the Evil Lyn figure and it looks amazing. It looks really cool. This is a really weird comment, and it's a combination of like, it looks like how the statue is framed, and maybe this is a weird way to phrase it. I think she just like the legs don't look right. It looks like she has leggings, but it looks more like pants. And that's kind of the only, like, I think she is instantly recognizable as Evil Lyn. But I think when I'm trying to judge, like, why to me, you're right. Like, didn't quite click, because like the helmet looks amazing. It looks like a really cool one. I think it was just the pants or whatever you're going to call them, pants, leggings. Those just look a little off from like the classic Evil Lyn design. But it's amazing stuff. And that was you? Like, how much of that was your design or collaboration with others?
So at that time, I was an art director, so I just had to work with designers. Stepan Savic, who's an amazing artist. He kind of like started with the
He-Man work. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done covers for the comic. He's amazing. Like he was kind of like, to me, the reason why we do a new modern reinterpretation of the thing. So when people are like, "Oh, Dave, you're the architect," I'm like, I'm only the architect because I saw what Stepan did and I believed it's possible. Like, I didn't really have his art. I might have been like, I don't know if I can do this, but seeing his art gave me the confidence, work with him closely. I worked with other artists. Alex Pasenko, who's a freelance artist, he was a designer. Matt Grown was an in-house designer. Worked with a couple other people, like skipping off the top of my head, I think Ian McDonald worked on some of the designs. So there's like a team of designers, and then there's a team of sculptors, and then there's some things we're up against like certain deadlines, and some were, this is when Sideshow is transitioning more and more digital. So there's still like, I think He-Man and Skeletor were all digital. Evil Lyn was traditional. And then She-Ra was all digital. So I think Evil Lyn was the only one of all what we're calling the Legends line. Because when I was working with Chad, jumping ahead to Tweeterhead, we don't want to call it like the Sideshow Tweeterhead line or just Tweeterhead line, because it ignores Sideshow line. So we pitched to Mattel. We call this Legends. Kind of give, hey, we have the original vintage He-Man. We have the New Adventures. We have 2000X. We want to give this a name, so it like has a thing that continues from Sideshow through Tweeterhead. And then if, God forbid, something happened to Tweeterhead and the line can continue somewhere else, it would have a thing. It wasn't associated with a company. It was associated with a look. And it kind of, again, like if you look at traditional vintage / filmation, then you look at like the movie, the New Adventures, the 2000X, you see like an evolution. And then this is kind of like where new movies and video games hopefully could go. But sorry, I forgot where I started with that thought. But yeah, sorry. So I was a art director, just kind of like worked with all the different artists to like come up with a look. So, I sometimes I'd have a strong vision, like, this is what we need. sometimes I didn't have an idea and an artist came up with an idea. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And like, let's change this, push this.
It's an
whatever.
awesome figure, and it's a really, again, here, I'll throw this out. So I'm a software developer, but here's the joke, because I've like talked to designers and other people. I'm like, you can just put everything in a table, right? Because I'm like a back-end software developer. So like front-end people hate, and that'll relate to like artists and whatever. So, take any of my input with a grain of salt. I mean, I think that Evelyn is a bust would have done gangbusters. That's my two. And who knows? Like, again, if we're going all the way back to
I'm gonna find a copy of that statue, cut off the top, and send you just the legs. That's what I'm gonna do.
It's gonna be like a Christmas story thing. I'm gonna be like, Karen, look at this. She's like, what the hell is that? And I'm like, it's Evelyn's legs. I'm gonna put it in the living room. She's like, no, absolutely
You're
not.
gonna call them pants. People are gonna be like, they're not pants, they're leggings. Like, but they're pants.
Leggings are a type of pants. It's like that's
All right. And then I do want to
talking.
shout this out. Going over to Tweeterhead, looking over the action figures. There's so much cool stuff. They look amazing. I heard you talking with Jeff. You do have amazingly cool friends, Jeff. And if you go back to episode 42, which is, it's recent enough for me not to say, hey, belongs back on the show, Jeff, but far enough in the past that it's getting close there. So there is a prequel to the episode we're doing now, episode 42 of Jeff Has Cool Friends, where you talk a ton of He-Man for obvious reasons. And you even talk the trap jaw figure. And I will say this, I hated the show Thundercats, but cannot deny the coolness. And the Panthros at, we're talking pants, right? It sounds like pants. The Panthros at Tweeterhead looks so damn cool. And
You
it
had an
upsets.
S at the end of Panthro?
Is it there's not an S there?
Dre,
No,
is
I
this
did
because,
not
is
watch
this
the
because
show.
people drop the S on Andre so much that you're
Yes, you got. I'm going to start adding them.
Shove S's everywhere. Yeah.
So it's Panther, not. I even just said, by the way, I hated Thundercats. Never liked the show. Found it god awful and boring. Didn't like the animation style, but could still accept like the sword looked cool. As everyone knows, Panthro, the tweet figure, looks amazing, and I'll say like looks way cooler than it has any business looking, given people that know the source material.
Thanks. And that's an interesting one because it's kind of like done in the same spirit of like continuing what was started Sideshow, and then Panthers kind of, because of Sideshow, when I was there, we did Lino, Chitara, and Mumra in transformation mode, and the line stopped. So when I was with Chad, I'm like, hey, we should do the same thing we do the He-Man Master Universe stuff. Let's do Panthro. So we want to do Panther, we want to do Tiger, we want to do Mummy, Mumra, we want to do a redo of Lino. So like with Tweeterhead, just thinking back to like what Jeff was saying with like all the ways of overdoing He-Man Skeletor, we want to not over-offer them, but at some point re-offer them, because someone might be jumping into the new Tweeterhead statue line and they just like, oh, I just got Trapjaw and Skeletor and I pre-ordered Beastman and whatever. It's like, but I don't, at one point they would have been like, but I don't have Skeletor. So that's why we re-offered Skeletor. Sideshow, we did a Skeletor, we're calling it Legends version 1. And then the Tweeterhead one is still Skeletor Legends, but we're calling it like version 2, because it's kind of like, you got to eventually do a new Skeletor. We're going to eventually do a He-Man. We're going to eventually do a new Evil Lyn. And that's a great opportunity because we can kind of like, change things that might not have worked as well then that we think could work better now because of, the way the line kind of evolves a little bit. So Panthro is kind of a continuation of the Sideshow Thundercats line, but kind of like updating certain things that, a lot of fans are very vocal about not liking with Lino, which we got some of those changes into Chara when I was working there. But now Panther is like, I think Panther is perfect to me. And some people love it for all the reasons you're saying, which is Ross. Some people don't love it because it's not exactly like the cartoon, and you'll never make those people
And
happy.
they're wrong. I will throw this to give, and sorry to talk over you so much. This is such cool stuff, Jeff. I really appreciate Dave being here. I will throw this, Jeff. Panthro has some spikes on him. So, I think you've given Dave a challenge about figures that are resin with spikes.
Yeah. If they're long, skinny, it would make sense. The Panthers are shorter, and that's how I would do Spike-Or.
You Spike-Or the same way. So now, one of the things I wanted to talk about too, because of what you're doing here, and like you can also see some of the influences again. Like I think the He-Man 1-to-1 bust did a really good job of taking that sort of hairstyle that the Four Horsemen wanted to like incorporate to be less of like the Prince Valiant style
With
hair.
bangs.
But on the He-Man on Battle Cat, you definitely focus more on sort of that page boy vintage style of hair. So I thought that was really interesting. But one of the things that I'm I love seeing, because like, for example, when we worked together at PowerCon, the big exclusive was the Funimation color variant, the cartoon color variant
For
that you could
Hordak.
get there for
Yeah.
Hordak.
Yeah.
And we obviously, we talked about Disco Skeletor and you didn't say anything, but like, is it
Didn't.
something like, is that something that you have in every time you come up with a design, is you like an exclusive variant repaint option? That,
Yeah.
like, do you bring that with you every time you come up with the idea to produce a statue?
I didn't at first. Hordak was kind of like, hey, if we're only doing one, we're doing great. And I want to get the cartoon head in there as like an exclusive part. But then when Chad's like, oh, we should do a variant, but we'll make it really limited. I'm like, awesome. The head's got to get in there. And so then that got me a little bit in trouble with fans, because then I'm offering an exclusive part from the original exclusive gray version, the original one. It's super limited exclusive was like came with this head and then this. And now I'm offering those in the blue variant. They're like, dude, what the hell? So I'm like, it's totally fair that they said that. So
No,
now,
but they're not. But you weren't offering the other version of that. Like, it was a very limited and exclusive version of that. So I don't, man.
I appreciate the feedback, and so I try to learn from that. So with Tila, it's like, hey, with Tila, I'm gonna do the comic book blonde hair version or the mini comic blonde hair version. So I'm not using the Cobra staff from the exclusive version from the original one. I'm like, I'm bringing in just the mini comic version. So if anything, I try to limit the pieces that go in and offer a new piece just for the variant. So Tila, I planned that way. And then Merman was just a blue variant. We removed one of the heads and the tridents. It's like, this is what you get. We were going to maybe do a Filmation one that used the other head. We're going to do Filmation colors, but that didn't go through. And then what was the other variant that we went up with recently? Or did we? I forgot. Oh, Trapjaw. We're going to originally do 2 variants off of that. We're going to do more classic bright color, like original Filmation, mixed with a little bit of the vintage toy kind of look. And then do also the green mini comic one with the silver armor. But there was a miscommunication with the factory, so we could only do one. So we chatted and are like, hey, we think that more classic bright colors would be the more broad appealing ones of the green variant. So that was a little bit of a misstep, but again, we eliminated parts. We didn't give him the modern head or the modern arm. We gave him just the classic head. We gave him the classic arm that the original one came with. Then we additionally gave him a classic gun arm, since the original Trapjaw didn't get it. So we always tried to find, like, how do you make it feel like a genuine effort, not just like, oh, it's a paint variant. Like, oh, it's just a coat of the paint and that's it. Like, oh, doing whatever,
You know what you just said, and it reminded me of something I meant to talk about and forgot.
I hope it's good, not bad. Hope it ain't
Merman, the 2000X line corrected a mistake with Merman, in that the back of the original 8 card of Merman looked like the 2000X version, but the toy that actually got produced had we also call it the Stinkor head. So it had a different head than what was advertised. It was actually like, and it was one of those things, it's historically false advertising.
Yeah.
But when 2000X came in, they brought that head back as like, this is Merman, get it? And people really liked that. And that has now since become, like, you guys did one in that style, correct?
Yeah, and even the classics toy included both. I was trying to grab it, but it's like totally buried in like this.
Because you guys you guys did an animation style and a original card back. Like, you didn't do that original Mattel.
No, it would have looked. We talked about, but would have it would have looked weird. So I'm like, hey, let's go with the classic mini comic card back cross sell version. Let's go with like the more like the fish head spike sticking out the side and angle, which was more like the cartoon, which to me reads more fish anyways. So that's why we went with that angle instead of going the like vintage toy head. I'm just like, it just feels like it would be forced in and wouldn't work, So I'm just like, we opted out of doing that for the statue. So
my last question for you about this line, because I think this is probably the question that you get most often, and I'm not stupid enough to say what's coming up, because I know that you can't necessarily answer that question. So I'm going to say,
see if you can trick him, Jeff. See if you can trick him. Just do it.
I'm not going to trick him. I can't trick Dave. I like him too much. We share burritos too often. Shout out to producer Burrito. Didn't even know that Dave and I every once in a while enjoy a nice surf and turf burrito from Cilantro Mexican Grill.
So good.
What do you want to do?
So
what's on your wish list for this line?
To answer both. in a good way. So we have announced what's coming next is Sorceress. We've shown it. We showed her at PowerCon a couple times because she's been a hard one to get right. So we're finally getting Sorceress out. We showed and teased and announced Man-at-Arms and Scareglow. So Scareglow's coming finally, and actually had a really good update with the sculptor this week. And I'm really excited to have a unique take on Scareglow that I actually found out later. Like the Four Horsemen and Eric was working into like the 2000X look before they couldn't do it, which is kind of like, oh, it's frustrating, but same time it's kind of exciting that we're both on the same wavelength of what we're gonna do there. So those are announced, and those are what's coming next. I'm super excited because everyone's been telling us, oh, this is villains heavy. So we're like, boom, Sorceress, boom, Man-at-Arms, answering those questions. Man-at-Arms I'm really excited about because it's gonna be like a contrast to Trapjaw, where we talked about Trapjaw on the show a little bit, about how his armor was more like, hey, if orcs in Lord of the Rings existed and they evolved, like how would their technology evolve? It'd be more steampunky. So we wanted Trapjaw to look like he came out of what is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, you also, when you told me very specifically about Trapjaw, that you made it a point to make it look like you would get a staph infection if he touched you.
Yeah,
That's what you
him,
said.
Merman, same thing. And then also with Trapjaw, like I tried to come up with like rules for this world. So like there's a little bit of like a North Star guiding like the effort instead of making each character a unique weird thing. But I was like, hey, to make I have behind my computer, I'm pointing, I know you can't see it, but I'm pointing at my 2000X NECA big Trapjaw statue, which is like one of my favorite things ever. I'm like, I gotta do something different from that. So with Trapjaw, I also want to be like, hey, this world, I don't want any exposed wires. I'm like, they did it. It looks cool. And to me, it feels very 90s. Like when we think of like Omega Red with like the tendrils coming out and Apocalypse with the tubes coming out of his arms. I'm like, that works in that world. But for me now, if I'm thinking of like a modern take, like exposed wires would get caught on something or cut or whatever. So I'm like, hey, let's not do that. So with Man-at-Arms, I was thinking like, and we kind of tease this with some of the art. It's like, if Trapjaw Man-at-Arms came from the same school of like machinery and Trapjaw just became more like fast, rugged, hey, he lost his arm, so he's only work with one arm, like how does that look? And more crude than Man-at-Arms, how would his look? So there's like similarities in the design aesthetic, but then you can see they evolved a little bit more left, a little more right. So I'm really excited to show that off. And then Scareglow, going back to the original, hey, is he the ghost of Skeletor? Is he this? We're putting in some similarities between him and Skeletor. So there's a nod and kind of like a mirror reflection of like him. Is he Skeletor? Is he not Skeletor? Who knows? And then making him stand up on his own 2 feet, making him a unique character as well. So that's been really fun to try and like work all that lore in. But then future characters I would love to do, I'm a snout spout guy, and like trying to find a way to do a snout spout in this world would be a unique challenge. I'm also a villains guy, so like again, going back to Spikor, Webstore, Whiplash, Clawful.
Thank you.
Are like 4 of my favorites and there's probably one more I'm forgetting. Like Stinkor is really cool too. General Rat, like call him General Rat lore now because of like the 2000X one, but doing a Snake Man right would be cool. Doing a King Hiss right would be
King Hiss would be rad. Like bursting out of the skin suit.
Yeah, and it's like how do you do him? I've never liked the idea of him looking just too much like a human. It's like, why would the King of the Snake Man look like a human? You know, unless he's like literally cursed to look that way.
I always thought it was like because he has this weird sort of like camouflaged like ambassador aspect to it, where he has to like be a dignitary, but he's also a disgusting, monstrous warlord.
Yeah, so that's been something in the back of my head. Is like, how would I approach him to make classic fans happy, but make him make sense to me?
Shredded skin suit hanging off of his waist, right?
So he'd be a fun one. That I'm also like thinking of like variants. Like I love the idea of doing like a King Skeletor, God Skeletor. You know, like how would you do him if he like got the ultimate power? You know, like the Revelation TV show like did him
or like the
couple
movie.
Ways. Yeah, like the movie, like
the gold Skeletor from the old Franklin Jella. Oh, that was
that was God. So like, how would I approach that? How would I approach Battle Armor He-Man? How would I approach Battle Armor Skeletor? Like, so Jeff, I forgot if we talked about this in the last show with you, but like, I love that there's a different story for every like incarnation of it. Like the original mini comic was, A, then the filmation was E, then the live action movie was C, and then the new adventure was D. Everyone's different, right? And so like, what would be the story that ties all this stuff together, makes it all make sense? And then how does that help me push the design of this stuff? So I do have a rough story idea for all this stuff. Like, how would I make Faker come to be? Why does Trapjaw look the certain way he does? You know, we talked about that with like, even he has like ratchet straps to hold on his arm, because it's like, if he doesn't have his mechanical arm, he's one-handed. Like, how would a one-handed guy like put on his arm and stuff? So like ratchet straps makes it like you only need one hand to do that. So when I'm thinking of
that's
like
cool.
how would I approach some of these characters, like how would I approach battle armor Skeletor, battle armor He-Man? You know, like it's not like just, oh well, they need battle armor. It's like, well, why do they need battle armor? Maybe at the end of the, you know, story one, you know, Skeletor is trying to get both swords. He-Man gets both swords, really powers up. What does He-Man version 1, He-Man version 2 look like? And then when he defeats Skeletor, so Skeletor's answer is, well, I need battle armor to fight He-Man. So he makes battle armor. So he's like battle armor version 1. Then he defeats He-Man. Then He-Man's like, well, now I need battle armor eventually to fight Skeletor, because he has battle. It's like, how does that like work with each other? You know, instead of them just both showing up with battle armor. Okay, and even, you know, I was trying to, one element of my story I'm really proud of is like, why does Battle Cat have the helmet and Panther doesn't? You know, and I'm like, oh well, maybe in the story, like Battle Cat starts out with like, just instead of, I'm avoiding the Prince Adam Cringer thing because I just don't think it works in the modern thing at all. I'm going back to the mini comic where like He-Man comes from like a savage village, or you know, where they like, oh, you're just savages. Think of like Native Americans that are misunderstood, and he gets brought into this war, right? So this is my general idea. And so then eventually he sees this tiger that's untamable. Like they're just hates everyone, but he connects with it because he's from, you know, he's misunderstood too. He's the first one that can ride this savage tiger, and he gets a saddle. He's riding on. He goes into battle, and then he fights Beastman. Beastman has the ability to control animals. So boom, he turns Battle Cat against him. It's like, oh. Then they eventually defeat the bad guys, and they get Battle Cat back. It's like, Man-Arm's like, we need to build him a helmet, just like Magneto has a helmet to protect him from Professor X. Maybe Man-Arms builds his helmet to protect Battle Cat from mind control of Beastman.
Oh,
So that was my thought of like, why did he have this? And then I don't like the helmet on Panther. I know a lot of people like it, but to me, it's like this decorative thing that's with the horns, and like, it's cool. It's kind of heavy metal, but to me, it doesn't make sense. Like, I'd rather like Skeletor has control over it because of Beastman or something like that, you know? So that was my like, and that's like a long story. Is why would Battle Cat have the helmet? You know, it's just like, this is what makes sense to me. So it's
cool.
fun, you know, that kind of stuff for all these characters. Like, what would be cool? I have a really fun idea for Battle Axe He-Man versus Power Sword He-Man. And that's a story for another time. There's a good reason why he has both weapons, you know? Boom. Mic drop.
I'm fascinated by that. What would be the absolute last characters on either side that you would want to produce?
The last one, that's hard. It's like
What
saying
would be the ones where you're just like, you know what? I feel like Rio Blast is not one that I want. Or
so
like
it's funny to say
Stendar.
Rio Blast, because he's definitely up there for me in terms of like the last ones I want to do, but at the same time, like, people love him. So part of me is like excited by the challenge of like how to make Rio Blast work. And in my story, he's the one that connects space. He's the guy that shows up from space, and it's like, oh, he's like the bounty interdimensional bounty that shows up with laser guns. It's like, whoa, where do you come from? Get from space, space exists. But yeah, him and I was joking with Val Staples. I'm like, yeah, Drag Story. So it's funny you mentioned him earlier. Val's like, Drag, one of my favorites because the character you can. I'm like, oh, sorry, I just totally like talk shit on Drag Story. Those are two just to me. I'm like, they're not like the ones that get me excited, you know. And there's certain other
Probably won't
characters
sell.
Huh?
They probably wouldn't sell that well too. Like that's the other part.
especially
You
as,
do you have to consider that, right? The sales aspect.
$500 statue is different than like a $30 action figure, or even an $80 thing. Like, I think that's a great thing about like a company like Iron Studios doing really small 1/10 scale statues. They can go big with the roster because they're way more affordable, right? With us, we can do like 2 to 3, 4 max a year, and then eventually, yeah, we'll have to do like, you know, we just did a Skeletor redo. Eventually we're gonna do a He-Man redo. Then eventually we're gonna need another Skeletor. So how do we do Skeletor again? Skeletor on Throne would be really cool. Battle Armor Skeletor would be cool. They gotta make sense. So I just don't see certain characters making like the next 5-6 years without me hitting like certain characters that make sense. Like, I think Fisto and Jitsu are kind of like a must eventually, not like right this second, but like in the next 3 years. I see them as like, you do one, you do the other. They're both the big fist guy, right? It's like, you got one with a cry chop, you got one with a big fist. And then, yeah, I gotta do Triclops. He's like to me, Triclops is the most exciting, is not the most exciting, but people love him. He's one of the original toys. It's like, yeah, I got to do right by Triclops eventually. I got to do King Hiss because he's the leader of one of the major factions.
Triclops would be really neat because you could, it seems like when you have like the peg aspect of it, like you could set the peg up to move it. Like that seems really interesting. With Fisto and Jitsu, would you design them in such a way that you could put them next to each other and they would like look like they were interacting with each other? Or is that something that would be a little bit too antithetical? Like it would look like an action pose normally, but also like if you put them together, they were.
With the Legends line, we're doing it more like a group photo where like all the bad guys are like ready for battle and the good guys are more stoic and like calm and confident. So it's more about that and then making them work together. The 1/6 scale classic He-Man on Battlecat was designed to work on his own, then designed to also go with the Skeletor and Panther 1/6 scale classic statue. So you could pose them straightforward, they look cool, pose them at each other, and then they're going into battle. So I think with Jitsu and Fisto, I wouldn't make them in a dynamic getting ready to go to battle with each other, but they're strong standalone. But if you do like they do kind of mirror each other in a way, even though they literally both have like the right hands as their, like unique things. I can't do it literally as a mirror thing, but I would do it in a way where they would complement each other in a great way where, again, they work as a standalone thing, but then when you get both, you put them side by side, like these, and you turn them slightly towards each other. It's like, oh, these guys are going to go at it without it being like a dynamic thing,
Awesome. Dave, I feel absolutely so lucky that you came onto the show to talk to us about this. I realize we have eaten up a lot of your valuable time doing this show. One of the things that we didn't get a chance to go too deep on, but I very much want to make sure we promote and talk about here, aside from all the great Tweeterhead stuff that you do and the past work that you did with Sideshow, I do want to say, where should we point people to if they want to check out Igo stuff, the Monsters and the Kaiju Doom stuff, and all the stuff you're specifically working on? Like, where should we send people?
Thanks. So it was weird because it kind of got weird at first. And I think I finally had a handle on it all. Igo stuff. There's Instagram and Facebook. I'm bad at, I need to set up a Twitter and TikTok or anything else down the road. But Instagram, Facebook, what I've been focusing on. Igo stuff is like the umbrella company. It's my Nintendo, right? And then Monsters is my Mario Brothers and Kaiju Doom is my Metroid. So they each have their own thing. So at Igo stuff, or just kind of like, hey, catch all, but then on Igo stuff, you'll see it was supposed to be at Monsters, but someone else already had it. So it's at the Monsters. And I think at Kaiju Doom I was able to get, but the website's or the Kaiju Doom. I hate that there's like this territory grab for like domain names on bullshit. But yeah, at Igo stuff, at the Monsters, at Kaiju Doom. And that kind of covers like my umbrella, my two main IPs I'm working on. Monsters is my love letter. He-Man meets Ninja Turtles meets Street Sharks, with a little bit of Game of Thrones tribal warrior battle stuff in there.
So fun.
And then Kaiju Doom is my R-rated Godzilla meets Devilman. I'm calling it Kaijus and Castles because a lot of kaiju stuff takes place in like modern day New York or, World War II Japan or something. I'm like, dude, we don't have any like medieval fantasy kaijus busting through castles. So that's my world there. And I have two produced figures through Acro, my first ever licensing deal on original IP I own. It's I have two out and they're awesome. I love it, and we're making two more. So
and one of, on a side note too, of synergistic moments, the first PowerCon that I ever went to was with my very good friend Eric Barnes, who you have occasionally collaborated with in working some of like the lore and stuff on some of your stuff. So I really love that aspect too. He's a big He-Man fan. So I just wanted to give him a good shout out as well because
Eric's been awesome. He's been helping me with building the world and story for Monsters. We're actually finish in big mega air quotes, like an outline for what the first season of the cartoon show would be in terms of like hitting major beats, introducing characters, how they get to where they get. Eric's awesome, a super fan of a lot of nerdy shit, and he's been awesome with. We feed off each other well. Like I'll throw an idea at him, he takes it, runs with it, throws it back at me, I run with it, and we get together for lunch, keep jamming with each other, and it's a blast. Like working with really cool collaborative people is the best. And Eric's become a friend through that process. A lot of people say never work with their friends. I end up working with people if they're cool and talented. I become friends with them, and Eric's awesome. So thank you, Jeff, for introducing me to Eric.
You guys, you're both incredibly likable. I enjoy you very much. Eric wanted to come to that Hellboy art show that you had a piece in. He was like, I want to come. And that's actually, so it really is. I do love being able to make those connections. And speaking of connections, everybody, follow Dre at Nerd Numbers because he is an absolute delight. And we're so glad that we get to do this show. So Dre, thank you for doing the show as well.
This was ridiculous. I mean, when I re-listened to the Jeff Has Cool Friends episode with Dave, I was like, oh, this is like the spiritual prequel. And what was really funny about that, Dave, is listening to that episode was right when Nerd was starting up. So Jeff was just like, oh yeah, and I've started up this new Nerd show. And that was season 1 we did on video games. And then season 2, we started like hitting He-Man and stuff. And it's like, yeah, it was just getting started. So that's really awesome. Spiritual prequel. If you enjoyed this, episode 42 of Jeff Has Cool Friends. As Jeff noted, you can find me most places on the internet as Nerd Numbers, and then I occasionally also talk just as nerdy about basketball over at the Box Score Geek Show. Just search, all of the places podcasts are found to hear myself and Brian Foster, and occasionally guests talk about basketball, WNBA, nerdy stat stuff. Jeff, it's going to be coming out tomorrow. I'm going to have 2 podcasts coming out tomorrow. Brian Foster and myself, spend over an hour explaining how awesome the Celtics are. I argue that the 2024 Celtics, who just won a title to date this show, are probably the second greatest team of all time.
I love to hear that. Thank you so much for.
Now, how about you, Jeff? Where do we find you?
Well, I mean, if you guys are here, I really, really appreciate that, especially if you're at patreon.com/JeffMay. If you are listening for free, I really appreciate that too. If you want to head on over to patreon.com/JeffMay, you could have listened to this early. You get early access to uncensored episodes with bonus content on Jeff Has Cool Friends, which is obviously my baby, the show that I love so much. I love introducing people that I love and showing how cool they are. I'm a big fan of my friends. In case you couldn't tell by how much I adore both of you, I love being able to talk it up and see what makes you guys tick. So Jeff Has Cool Friends. You can get early access to uncensored episodes with bonus content, as well as, of course, early access to Nerd with Dre and myself, as well as the Patreon exclusive Ugh Fine with Kim Crawl. I do Tom and Jeff Watch Batman on the Gamefully Unemployed Network with Tom Ryman, and all the stuff I do with Adam Todd Brown on the You Don't Even Like Podcast Network. At Jeff Has Cool Cards, you can go watch the episode where I open Masters of the Universe cards. That's on YouTube at Jeff Has Cool Cards. The show is called I Must Break You. Come hang, watch that. It's a new network I had to start, and boy, that's hard to do. So on top of that, and a Mint on Card is the second Friday of every month at Blast from the Past in beautiful Magnolia in Burbank, California. If you're listening to this and you're a vintage toy fan, I run a comedy show and a vintage toy store that's going to have a lot of the toys that we're talking about right now. So check that out as well. Dave and Dre, you're both fantastic. Dave, thank you for joining us and taking the time. It really means a lot to us. And guys, check out all the Tweeterhead stuff as well.
It's dangerous. I'll tell you that ahead of time.
Yeah, it's fun. It's expensive, nerdy stuff. It hates your bank account, or your bank account hates it, I guess. Yeah. But it was a fun show, guys. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for inviting me on. And it was great to meet you, Dre, finally, and talk He-Man nerdy stuff in the middle part and learning some stuff from Jeff, who listed off all 862 versions of He-Man toys from 2002, 2004. I'm like, wow, I forgot
we never did this on the movie episodes because we didn't have to, or like any of the other ones when we did like the TV specials. But when it's like toy lines, I kind of feel like it's important to address that checklist because of the business choices / seeming insanity behind it.
Yeah. And also what you remember as a kid is different from what actually happened. Like, oh yeah, no, Zodiac came out like what, wave 4? You're like, no, literally the last figure that it's like, right? Whoa, what? Oh no, they did your He-Man oh no, they did a new He-Man and Skeletor every wave. You don't even know. You don't know. Yeah.
It's definitely one of those things that people do recognize about you, that you are more than just an architect of something, but you are a fan of it as well. And it really, really showed in this episode. So thank you so much. Masters of the Universe 2000X. Buy us all of the toys, mint on card, and send them to us and make us wealthy people.
No. Stuff for definitely. Dave, your stuff is too awesome. Igo stuff. I am really looking forward to the Monstors. It looks like that's right near some benchmarks, some milestones. So check out Igo stuff. Check out Monstors. They're as cool as described. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to editing this episode, Jeff, to get it out tonight.
Yeah, it's going to take a while to render. So be patient. All right. Thank you all so much. We love you all. And come back soon for Jeff Has Cool Friends, because that's bi-weekly. And then next month for the next season of Nerd, where Dre and I are going to discuss off air what we're going to do. But thank you all so much, and we will see you very soon. All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Nerd. If you want to help keep the podcast growing, it's definitely worth your while to head over to patreon.com/JeffMay. And also you'll get bonuses and early access to cool stuff. Cool stuff like videos of Jeff showing off awesome collectibles and doing pack-breaking videos. It'd be worth your while to check out Jeff May's YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@HeyThereJeffro. That's spelled JEFFRO. And shocker, that is also his Twitter and Instagram account as well. So follow Jeff everywhere. You can find me most places on the internet as @NerdNumbers. Also, shout out to Chris Haugen for the outro theme of Pure Magic. Thanks so much, and we'll be back with another nerdy subject soon.